We're live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vasinda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and dream is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games, and to help great players find amazing designers whose games they can love. We do that in a lot of different ways, but the most fun of them is to sit down with the creators of those games and to just play them and learn how they are played. Today is no different. We are sitting down to play The Between with Jason Cordova. Jason, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find your work online, and tell us a little bit about The Between.
Yeah, so I'm Jason Cordova. I am the creator of The Between, which is a game of gothic horror in Victorian era London. And yeah, I am the co-host of a podcast called Fear of a Black Dragon, which is about OSR modules. And I am the founder of the Gauntlet gaming community, which is a pillar of the indie role-playing game scene. As far as The Between goes, I have a whole spiel to do whenever you unleash me, Tony. So
spiel away. I love a good spiel.
Yeah. So if, one of the great things about The Between, if you are going to be a keeper for The Between, which is what we call the GM in the game, is that the whole sort of like introductory part of the first session is scripted for you. So all you have to do is read it. And so I'm going to just do that now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I like to do a procedure called CATS. CATS is an acronym that stands for concept, aim, tone, and subject matter. I do this in order to just establish some basic expectations for what the game is about and what we're all going to be doing during this two-shot that we are doing of The Between. So the concept, The Between is a tabletop role-playing game about a group of mysterious monster hunters in Victorian-era London. These hunters learn about various monstrous threats in the city, and they conduct investigations in order to neutralize those threats. Over time, they become aware of the plans of a criminal mastermind who is pulling the strings behind the scenes, and they'll eventually have to face and confront that criminal mastermind in order to save Queen and country. The Between is inspired by the TV show Penny Dreadful, but also takes inspiration from British horror classics, the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, pulp era media, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, From Hell, things like that. The game's mechanics are based on Apocalypse World and my other game, Brindlewood Bay, although you don't need to know anything about those two games before you play. The aim of the characters in the story is to keep London safe by investigating monstrous threats and learning how to stop them. Our aim as players is to learn more about these characters and their mysterious pasts, as well as to paint a vivid picture of our version of Victorian-era London, which is a responsibility we all share, by the way. And the aims for the session today are to introduce the characters that are already created, and then just learn the basics of how to play. And we'll have a little debrief, hopefully, at the end as well. The tone is dark, mysterious, and sensual. A little bit of levity or humor from time to time is okay, but we should always strive to return to that dark, brooding place that the characters exist in. Subject matter, strap in, murder, cannibalism, body horror, dark sexual themes, erotic sensuality, threats to animals and children, foul language, blasphemy, witchcraft, and defiling graves and corpses are all things that come up in this game. We're going to talk about safety tools, but in the interest of just setting some basic expectations, you should know that the game deals with some rather dark and intense subject matter. So that was a lot, but that's my cats.
Awesome. So all the things our parents warned us about when they said don't play role-playing games, we're about to get right in the middle of. No, I'm super excited. And just for people who don't know, like I'll give you guys a little bit behind the scenes. Like anytime you're creating a streaming setup, you have to make choices about what you're doing. A lot of the things that we do here on Plus One are tremendously influenced by the work over at the Gauntlet, both within their play community and their and everything they do, because everything Gauntlet does is informed by play. If you're not familiar with the Gauntlet, plug, like, just go check it out and check out the great things they do. I always love when people come ready for those pieces. With that said, before we meet the characters, let's meet our other players, and then we'll do a little bit more. I'll kind of push things back over to you maybe for lines and veils, since you're already you know how to do that, and I don't have to do as much on this side of things because you and I do things in a very similar way. So with that said, let's go ahead and meet our two other players. We've got Sean F. Smith. Sean, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online?
Exactly. Hello, everybody. As previously established, I am Sean Smith. That's he and him. And I'm a magician, a games designer, and an author. So functionally, I'm here to promote myself in always the ways. The thing I'm particularly excited about for this is I've run a few games for Tony here on Plus One EXP before, most of which has been like Merkborg and the like. And the last time I played was very, very cutesy, but I am at heart a horror GM. So I am very, very much looking forward to the grimness. In fact, if you're watching this either now or in the future, in which case, hello, future people. My game that you might most like is a horror noir game called Exuvier that you can get in a few places if you like hardbacks, or more places if you like digital things. So I'm big on bugs and body horror. And so I'm excited to see the Gothic here. That's me.
And Sean, if you drop me a link to that over on Discord, I'll get it into the chat also, so everybody who wants to go check that out absolutely can. Let's hop over and meet our other player. That's Max Wallander. Max, tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online.
Yeah, I am Max Lander. I am a game designer and other kind of artist. On the topic of horror and aesthetics, I tend to be very comedic in a lot of my game design, but my other type of art, photography, is often really dark. Involves a lot of fake blood and frequently a lot of nudity. So that is a lot of my personal interests are aligned with the themes of and aesthetics of this game, even if my gameplay often tends to be a little bit more on the comedy side. I'm currently
Max, Max, just real quick, before you talk about the great thing you're about to talk about, talk about 20% louder or move a little bit closer to your microphone.
Oh no, I'm so
the biggest problem is you've got three other people who have just absolutely killer microphones and setups going on right now. So I want to make sure you don't get lost in any of that.
I am not used to being the quiet one.
I know.
This is new for me. I don't know how to deal with this. I'm currently itch funding a game called Himbos of Myth and Metal, which is, as aforementioned, very comedic, and can be found online everywhere at Maxwell Lander, whether that's on Twitter or on Itch.
Awesome. I dropped the links to Himbos in the chat. It's doing incredibly well with funding, and I am super excited to get a chance to play it in a couple of weeks here on stream with Max and some other folks. And I'm dropping in Exuvier right now also too. We got a couple things going on later on this week. Over the course of the next month, we're going to be covering a lot of things. We first and foremost are going to be doing a lot of Zemo, that's Zine month coverage, so a lot of small creators who are releasing zines in the month of February. One that I would love to draw your attention to is 1300s. It's going to be funding over on GameFound. You can go to ttrpg.link /13H in order to get a chance to check out 1300s. It's a system agnostic bounty hunter manual with 13 amazing hunters you can drop into any science fantasy setting. And today is the last day we are powering up our own itch funding project. That's the 20-page beta for Through the Void, which is our minimalist OSR inspired space RPG. But you didn't come here to hear about any of that. You came here to watch us play The Between. So that's what we're going to be doing. But please go support these amazing creators. Max, you're still a little bit quiet. So during our first break, we can fiddle around with it a little bit. But if you have any other way to turn up or just want to make sure you keep that in mind, please do. With that said, I would normally introduce lines, veils, and the X card, but I'm just going to hand things over to Jason to kind of walk us through any other safety pieces and into The Between.
Thank you very much. So I mentioned all those horrible things during subject matter earlier. Despite that, no game is more important than the people playing it. We're going to paint a dark, unsettling portrait of Victorian-era London, but we're going to do it in a way that respects everyone's boundaries of safety and consent. In order to do that, we'll be using some safety tools, and we're going to have essentially 3 safety tools, I think. The open door policy, which is quite simple. Anyone can just leave for any reason. Lines and veils, which we'll talk about in a moment in more detail. And I like to do the X card as well. And in the context of this, if something happens in the game that you find to be uncomfortable in an unfun way, because you can have fun discomfort, right? Just say X card or just type it in the chat and I'll stop. I might ask what is being X carded, but I won't ask why is it being X carded. Lines and veils, though, is probably my personal preferred safety tool of all safety tools. Lines are things that we are not going to have in the game at all in terms of subject matter. Veils are things that we are okay with being in the game, but we prefer not to role play them or see them on screen too much. And on our little character keeper that we're using for the game, which is an online play sheet, we also have the option of ask first, as well as you can express a particular interest in something. And so I think I'm going to just go through all that stuff that we have noted here, just so that for ourselves, but also so that people watching the stream have a good sense of what may or may not be happening. So we only have one subject matter that is going to be completely lined out, and that is sexual violence. So we're not going to have that. We have 2 veils, torture, and then explicitly anti-Catholic references. And then we have two interest topics, which are body horror and classism. Also, we have some notes about romance with PCs and NPCs. I'm not going to go through all that, but just it's a thing that could happen. So we'll handle it according to the lines and veils preferences here when we need to. So shall I keep going, Tony? Like, Are we just in it now?
You're good. We're in it now. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. So normally at this point, I would talk about character creation, but we've already made characters. And so we're going to go straight to character introductions. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about something that makes the Between very unique among role-playing games. I can't think of another role-playing game that does this. You are not allowed to talk about your character's backstory, either in character or out of character. You can think about it, you can ponder it, you can start formulating that in your mind, but you should never share it unless you're prompted to do so by the game's rules. And I'll let you know when it's okay. The game's rules will let you know. The reason why the game is this way is because when I designed it, I intended to create a sort of cinematic experience. And so we learn the characters' backstories when it's very interesting to do so, and at very almost cinematically important moments, right? And so I also just don't love tons of backstory front loaded into the game. I prefer to learn things as we play. So that's also just my little personal axe to grind, which made it into the design. But it's a little different. And so when we introduce characters, it's going to be a very, very basic introduction. So when I call on you, I only need to know a few things. Your name, your look, and your vice. And that's it. There might be some, you also have moves that you've already selected or had selected for you, depending on the playbook. And I may ask about those or talk about those a little bit, but name, look, and vice is all we need right now. So I'm going to start with our host. Tony, please tell us those basic things about Liam Thop. Is that how we're saying that?
Yeah, Liam Thop. So Liam, which more from a lack of clarity, I think, than any sort of necessarily personal preference, uses they, them pronouns. They are most often seen covered with a black velvet coat with blood red trim on the edges, an asymmetrical kind of moppy haircut, and a lot of dirt covering the rest of them. They're a very slight individual, and their vice is Sunday morning mass, which is potentially my favorite vice that has ever made it into a game.
I love it. I do have one question about the character's pronouns. So in the game, every character is referred to by like honorific and then their surname, Mr., Ms., and what have you. Is it okay if we call Liam Mr. Thop? Is that going to be fine?
I think so. I think Liam would have zero problem either way, and probably kind of delights as it transitions back and forth. With
I could go back and forth too. I think that'd be great as
inscrutability.
well.
Yeah. So either I think is fine essentially in this situation.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you. And okay, that's good. We'll put a pin in that for now. We're going to come back to Liam though. And Liam is playing the vessel, which we'll talk about more in a bit. Let's go over to Max and the undeniable Francis Robel, I suppose. Robel?
Yeah. Francis Robel is like also uses they and he pronouns, probably contextual to the world is more often he and more internally they. So say we all, it's fine. And is usually is like a very thin kind of wafy kind of classic goth vampire look. And is always kind of wearing a plum velvet smoking jacket and sheer gloves, and the jacket will always match the loafers. And and Francis's vice is floggings, which is probably one of my favorite vices to make into a game.
Fabulous, thank you. I have to say, the undeniable is noteworthy for their physical beauty, but looking at the pictures of all these characters, these are very, very good-looking characters.
Oh, yeah, now that we're on the last one, I'll pop up so that everybody else can see how pretty our characters is.
They're so pretty. Yeah, it's great. Okay, we'll come back to Francis in a moment. Let's go over to Sean and the legacy. This is Pincrayer?
Yes, Pincrayer. So if you take someone that looks a bit like Ernest Hemingway, was a sailor, so quite almost like scarred at the edges of a face, windswept hair, constantly a long duster coat, and when he's not looking like he belongs in the woods, he quite enjoys skinning things, mostly for taxidermy, but it's fascinating. It's much more like it's not the skin that's needed, it's the rest of it.
I love it. Thank you. It's so good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and I'm going to read a little descriptive blurb about the playbook. I'm going to read it to the player of that character. The rest of us or everyone else is going to listen closely, and based off everything we know about the character up to this point, which granted is not much, but based off everything we think we know about them so far, everyone else is going to say one thing that they think can be found in that character's personal quarters in Hargrave House. We'll talk about Hargrave House more in a minute. But in their personal quarters, in this place where you all work and live, this is kind of like your starting equipment, essentially, right? So I'm going to go back over to the vessel. And so Liam, for as long as you can remember, dark entities have been near. They lurk just inside your peripheral vision, just at the mirror's edge. When you close your eyes, you can actually feel them. Their cold breath, their oily touch, an occasional feverish embrace. They want to be inside you. They want to rub up against your guts and deposit their power. Others are drawn to you as well, those who would use you to master these dark things in order to serve their own agenda. Some of these interlopers, these usurpers, can be of use, such as your fellow hunters with whom you share a home. Others, like the Coven, are best avoided. In either case, you are no one's object, tool, or weapon. You are no mere bystander. Your fate is yours to shape. And so Liam Thop is a character of darkness, in communion with dark beings, functionally a witch-type character. Sean and Max and myself will now each name one thing we think can be found in Liam's personal quarters. And so long as Tony's okay with it, Tony, you're going to write that down in the character keeper in the section that says personal quarters. Who wants to go first?
I have an idea.
Go for it.
I propose a stolen ceremonial dagger from some kind of place of worship or something.
Mm-hmm.
I took a thing that gives me a bunch of items in my room. If there's overlap, should I just go ahead and change that in my?
Oh, do you have the did you take
the
Witch's Cupboard?
I did.
Oh yeah, you
I mean I can just fiddle around with the Witchard's Cupboard after we're done with this too. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's fine. However you want to do it, it's fine.
Okay, cool. No, I think that's great.
I'm going to say that you have a stuffed raven.
Love it.
I'm going to continue with the dark theme, and imagine an hourglass, but instead of sand, it's like milled down obsidian, so it's like pure black sand.
Love that. Fabulous, thank you. Let's go ahead and talk about Witch's Cupboard since you mentioned it, Tony. So this is one of your moves. You start with a move called Rites of Salt and Smoke, which is essentially how you do rituals. And Witch's Cupboard is gives you basically access to a bunch of items that you can use to get advantages on your die rolls and other things. And so all those things that you choose from the Witch's Cupboard, you can go ahead and just put those right into your personal quarters. They're available for use right away. So
cool.
Fantastic. Thank you. And let's go ahead and go over to Francis. And I need to pull up my little text real fast. So give me just one moment. The undeniable. Francis, you have always been the most beautiful person in the room. Your looks have opened doors for you for as long as you can remember. All the money and material things anyone could want laid at your feet. Artists have found inspiration in the brightness of your eyes, the delicate curve of your cheekbones, the plump softness of your lips. One such artistic work, a masterwork, rises above them all, for it captures the essence of you. It is quite simply more you than you. Lately, people sacrifice everything to be near you, to please you, and if they're lucky, to touch you. But what to do when you get bored with being one of the gods? Well, as it turns out, you go hunt monsters in London. And I'm going to say that you have an endless wardrobe.
I'm going to offer more in the visual department again, specifically with like a powder brush. But it's a vintage powder brush in the sense of like 1600s, so it does contain lead.
I love the idea of maybe a well-worn pipe that we never see you smoking.
Do I hold it? Do you see it held in my hand ever? Is it a thing that, or
that's up to you?
Great.
Fantastic. Let's take a look at your moves really quick. The sort of principal move of this playbook is the reflection, which is the sort of masterwork that is you, Dorian Gray style. It absorbs all the stains of your soul, right? And we'll talk about the masterwork in a bit. I think the first time we see it, we'll probably talk about it then. But you also have another move, which is called Giveth, which is a pretty great move because it essentially allows you to declare any side character at any time is secretly one of your worshipers, because you're essentially a god, right? And you get all sorts of advantages over them for doing that. So that's a great one. We should note that Giveth has a corresponding move called Taketh Away, in which you destroy said worshiper to get power from them. So okay, now let's go over to Mr. Pincrier. The Legacy. Hargrave House is filled with monster hunters, but you're the only one who was born to do it. Your parents, and their parents before them have known one thing: reveling in the destruction of ungodly beasts and carnivorous terrors. Your family name has been whispered in secret meetings for generations, passed along to those in need of your hereditary talents. You were taught how to hold a blade when you were a child and completed your first hunt not many years after. Your knowledge of combat and trapping is unparalleled, but you've grown disillusioned with your heritage. You want to be more than just another entry in a long ledger of death. You want out. But you have one last score to settle first. A curse of sorts, a beast that's haunted you and your family for as long as anyone can remember. Prepare to say your family's vow. And that vow is the name of all the character moves. Altogether, they make up the vow. But let's talk about what's found in your personal quarters at Hargrave House. Tony and Max, go ahead if you have an idea.
I want to say like maybe a claw, or some remnant, like a piece of whatever it is that is the beast that is hunting your family.
Oh.
It's not a whole thing, but like some little part.
That's great.
I love your grandmother's chest with a false bottom in it.
I'm going to say you have a I think you have like a book, and each page has like a list of the exploits of a member of your family, of one of your ancestors, and it might have clues and stuff in it too. Now, the legacy, there's no move to choose. You start with the same two moves, always. One is called a Hunter's Life, and then the other is Never Over. And the Hunter's Life, there are several things that are going on there, but the main thing is that you have a hereditary weapon that's been passed down through the generations of Pencryers. And I'm curious, what type of weapon is it?
So it is a whip.
Fantastic.
It's kind of like partially reforged from bits of sword.
Oh, nice. Good. I like that. And the other move is called Is Never Over. And so you have the first part of the vow. Hunter's Life is never over. And this is about the beast that you're hunting. Now, regrettably, in a two-shot, this is not going to be a super salient part of the game because it just takes time to develop. But we do get to know a few things about the beast in the beginning. And so I would like to know, what does your family call the beast, and what type of creature is it? And importantly, how is it exceptional among its kind?
So it's called Vithardir, or something similar to that. And it is primarily spiritual in that it's essentially a revenant, so a spirit reanimating something itself. But the thing that it's reanimating in this case is like dead vegetation, or almost like it is a tree, but it's humanistic somehow.
Fabulous. I love that. Well, that actually leads to a really interesting question then. The thing that Max gave you for your personal quarters, what is it in that case?
It would be essentially like a fruit, but the fruit itself that's like entirely withered and doesn't actually have any fruit flesh. It just looks almost like an apple.
Fabulous. I love it. That's great. At this point, if anyone has any questions for the other players about their character, or if you have a question for me about clarifying something on the playbook, let me know, or let the other player know. And if not, I'm going to continue on. So, Hargrave House. So the characters all live and work in this place called Hargrave House. It is in Belgravia, which is a very fancy neighborhood in London. Unlike all of the mansions around it, it is done in a very old Gothic revival style. So it stands out as this almost like Gothic horror show in the middle of the, in the middle of the square, because it's been there for a very long time. It's much older than everything around it. No one knows who owns or operates Hargrave House. It is something that the characters might know, but we'll never really discuss it much in the game. And there are no servants. So it's on the three of you to answer doors and things, like when it comes right down to it. Because nobody wants to work there because the place looks uninviting. But the work has always been the same. Hargrave House's unspoken remit is to defend the crown from monstrous terrors. And sometimes those are literal monsters. Sometimes they are like serial killer type monsters, right? Figurative monsters. Often it is the stuff that Scotland Yard doesn't want to deal with or can't deal with. Your relationship with Scotland Yard is mostly antagonistic. They don't like you, and you are frequently in their hair. Every now and then, you work together on things, but not usually. And we don't dwell on how your characters really came to know each other or came to live here until we do. At certain points in the game, you'll be triggered to tell us more. But for now, Hargrave House and your presence in it just sort of is, okay? Now, as I mentioned, well, let's go back. The game is divided up into phases of play. There are 4 phases: day, dusk, night, and dawn. Dusk and dawn are just upkeep phases. Day and night are where the role play actually happens. The day phase is very casual, and you have control over what your characters... Sorry, letting that pass. You have control over what your characters do. So, if you want to go do this or go do that, that's perfectly fine. You're in control. It's a more casual approach. The night phase is the opposite. The night phase is fast, intense, and feral, and I'm in control. I like to say that the day belongs to you, but the night belongs to me. And then we have dusk and dawn in the middle to sort of like do upkeep and things like that. And so, with all that said, before we actually begin play, does anyone have any other questions? Okay. As I mentioned, Hargrave House is an old Gothic Revival style building. It stands out from its neighbors on Belgrave Square, which are done in the more conventional classical style. Hargrave House is also different because it's not just a residence, but a place of work, a place of dark work. And some more of that dark work has just landed on the doorstep. In this game, we have threats. That's what we call the scenarios. And in the beginning of the day phase, I introduce a new one. There can be up to 3. We're not going to have that many for this 2-shot, but if you were playing a campaign, there can be as many as 3 going at one time. So, and if you want to follow along a little bit, there's a tab on the character keeper that says threats, and I have started to fill in the information for our first threat, which is not the Limehouse Lurker, even though that's what I said when I told Tony originally. I changed it, so that's my fault if anybody was expecting that one. We are instead going to do the St. James's Street Ghost. Drink. Apologies. A back issue of the Illustrated Police News, a tabloid notorious for carrying salacious, blood-curdling tales of dubious provenance, has a story about a young maid, Ginny Hess, who was found dead, apparently from shock, in her employer's St. James's Street townhouse several months ago. The story claims that the townhouse is haunted, and that it was almost certainly the appearance of a ghost that caused the young maid to die of fright. After a cursory inquiry, you learn the precise address of the haunting, 18 St. James's Street, and the name of the family that lives there. They're called the Beals. I'm going to pose this question to Mr. Thop. Most tales of hauntings are complete nonsense, especially those carried by the Illustrated Police News. But Hargrave House has some experience with ghosts, and a particular detail in this story confirms that this is a legitimate haunting. What is it?
The this is where my lack of awareness of Victorian technology comes into play. Something doesn't work, and it's something that seems innocuous, but it's just an offhand mention, like a repair person that they mention there that happens to kind of tell this thing was broken, and that's oftentimes a sign of otherworldly interference. Let's say it's just, we'll just go easy, like the gas, like gas lights were constantly flickering in the house, and oftentimes would go out for hours and then surge back, and so they had brought out someone to look at the pipes.
I love it. That's good. Actually, I'm really glad that you bring up the thing about technology and stuff, because I do want to, something I kind of forgot in my little intro here, but it's worth going over. Even though this game is set in a historical time period, we aren't going to dwell on historical accuracy.
Right.
We'll do our best to represent the technology and culture of the era, but we're going to get some things wrong every now and then, and that's okay. I would like to point out that, as a related matter, during this time period, people with marginalized identities would likely have been treated very poorly in society. We're going to ignore that part of history. In the world of the between, things like race, nationality, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, disability, and neurodivergence are not a social barrier. So that's a great answer. Thank you, Mr. Thop. I love that. So Hargrave House knows that if flickering gas lamps is signs of actual spectral activity. And so we're saying confirmed it's a ghost. Now, the way this game works is we have questions and opportunities. There are questions that Hargrave House can pursue, and answering those questions correctly unlocks an opportunity. And so there are 2 questions for this particular threat. The first is, which part of the house is the ghost attached to? It has a complexity 4, more on that later. And the opportunity that it unlocks is it unlocks a brand new move that everyone can use called Old Bones. Now, in a 2-shot, this is probably not going to come up too much. And so the question that you're probably going to be more interested in is the second question, which is this: how can we get the ghost to move on to the next world? That's complexity 6. And the opportunity is it allows you to resolve the threat by performing a quieting ritual. Now, the way this game works is you'll be conducting investigations, and you can conduct your investigation however you want. If you want to go to 18 St. James's Street, that's fine. If you want to go talk to, somebody who might have handled Miss Hess's body, that's great. You can handle this however you want to do it. You'll be collecting clues as you do so, and there is no canonical answer to any of these questions. The answer is whatever you all come up with. So you will have the clues, and at some point when you're ready, you'll have a conversation about what you think the answer to the question is. And then we'll roll some dice and we'll see how you did. You are allowed to attempt a question as soon as you collect a number of clues equal to half the complexity. So if you're focusing on that second question, once you have 3 clues, you can make an attempt. But the attempt will be made at -3 because the die roll is minus the complexity plus the number of clues that you used in your theory. So in order to get to a flat roll, you have to have at least 6 clues, right? So now, this game has one more mechanical thing that I want to talk about, and that is called, that's the Janus Mask. So on the character keeper, there is there's a section called the Mask of the Past and another called the Mask of the Future. This is your collective Janus Mask. What the Janus Mask is during the game, things are going to happen because of die rolls, and you may not like the result. For example, your character might literally get killed. You can say, I'm going to invoke the Janus Mask, and then mark either a Mask of the Past or a Mask of the Future, and then we will rewind and get a new outcome. We'll bump up the die result, and something better will happen for your character. So we get to see the bad thing, but we don't necessarily have to stick with the bad thing, right? The Janus Mask in particular, the Mask of the Past is one of the few ways you're allowed to reveal your backstory. So that is one of the principal ways you do it. And so you're essentially getting like a little die bonus for telling us something about your past, right? Each threat, no, not each threat, but most threats also have their own aspect of the Janus Mask. And so for the St. James's Street Ghost, that aspect of the Janus Mask is called the Mask of the Unquiet. If you choose the Mask of the Unquiet, in order to improve a die result, each hunter narrates a flashback to their childhood when they experienced a haunting. And so that is there for anyone to choose. Whoever chooses it, it doesn't matter who chooses it. Everyone has to narrate a haunting. So from their childhood, and I'll note that on the threats section after we're off break. So the day phase, we introduce the threat. The threat's introduced. And so now I'm just going to ask everyone what they'd like to do today. How would you like to begin the investigation? That's something you can do. You can have a scene with another character because you maybe want to discuss something in particular, or you want to try to engage with one of your dawn questions. You each have questions on your character sheet called dawn questions. And as long as you can answer yes to those things at the end of during the dawn phase, then you get an experience point. That's how you get experience in the game. Mostly, I imagine you're gonna want to begin your investigations. So let's just talk about what you want to do, and then we'll figure out what the scenes look like. I'm going to start in the order of the sheet. Mr. Roble, what would you like to do today?
I feel like, I feel like probably I just want to go check out the house.
Sounds good.
18,
Yeah.
St. James, whatever.
I love it. Ms. Thop.
I want to not so much check out the house, but I want to check out the area surrounding the house. So I want to kind of, I think, I'm accompanying Mr. Rubel on the way, but I am oftentimes peeling off onto side streets and kind of finding my way into, above, and around the normal pathways that
I love
we
it.
had to go.
That's great. Mr. Ben Cryer.
So I would like to visit St. Paul's Church in Covent Garden.
Very good.
Primarily in order to pick up some holy water or equivalent.
I love it. That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds good. Let me think about what that scene might look like. I don't think it's the sort of thing that we necessarily need to role play. So did you have any other goal besides just picking up the holy water?
Checking essentially the area. So I'll probably go and support the others after that. So the first point of call being notice the grounds in which a quarry moves.
No, that's good. I like it. Okay. So let's pick up with the scene at St. Paul's, actually. Early in the day, I don't think there are, at least not today, I don't think there are many people there, even though Covent Garden is, even at this time period, is very, very busy with foot traffic, especially in the evenings. I think it's probably fairly quiet. Walking into the sept or whatever, the main area of the church, is perfectly fine. I'm curious, Mr. Pincrier, what is it like for you to step into the church? How does it make you feel?
It's not very comfortable, really. It's something very, very formalistic about churches. Something quite historically oppressive in the fact that there are true proper ways to do things. And although I'm a man of God, I do believe there's something about this ritualized grandeur that doesn't actually represent the reality of what the world is like.
Ritual. What a great choice of words, because you come from a family that has a literal vow that they speak. And I think I'd like to know, what is the Pen Crier's feeling on the divine?
It's a
Given
lot
their
more-
occupation.
Yeah, it's a lot more Old Testament than New Testament God. Definitely the idea of like nature all in its bloody tooth and claw. A certain amount of things that, like, we believe that even the monsters that we hunt are creatures made by God, and that it does require, in order to like make safe humans, that they be put down. So there's a certain like fear at the possible wrath that he can bring, rather than wanting necessarily to like exalt in his glories, just recognize that he's the one who's created all of this.
Thank you. And so, what do you do?
So I'll actually like walking up to the font, bold as brass, with like scuffed up like hip flask, and then just plunge it deep into the font itself, while if anybody else is in there, just kind of like staring them down.
Good. I think I'm going to give you a condition called, we'll call it unsteady, based off just being in the church. But I am going to let you put the holy water in your personal quarters.
Excellent.
Let's cut over to Mr. Roble and Mr. Thop. I think you probably came together in the same hansom cab. This particular neighborhood on St. James's Street, this is a place of social climbers. It's people who are desperately trying to get into the middle class. And here, middle class means like, it's probably what we would more consider upper class, like in the States, right? It's professionals, it's accountants, it's lawyers, that kind of thing, right? And I'd like to know, as a little paint the scene question, this is for everyone at the table. Paint the scene. When I say that, what I mean is I'm going to ask you a question in order to explore an idea about a place. And so the idea I'd like to explore about St. James's Street is this. How can you tell, looking around, that this is a place trying very hard to show off its money, its new money?
So for Liam, their eyes immediately are drawn to the empty spaces in that scenario. I think it's not so much the positive way that the scene is being painted, but it's the negative space of the there's mixed displays of opulence, but what I'm drawn to is the very obvious points that those are new, and there are still tons of signs of both poverty as well as like need kind of mixed into that, creating a kind of a stark difference. So maybe let's identify that as like there's like a bustling new shop that most people's eyes would be drawn to, but mine is the like the dog in the alleyway with a man sitting next to it that are both incredibly hungry looking, kind of in the dark, is where Liam's eyes are kind of immediately drawn. Essentially the new wealth has not had time to chase any of the things that it might consider less than out of the area.
I love it. Thank you. And here I'll address you as players, because this is an out of character sort of question. Kind of. Can be in character too. Max or Sean, anything to add?
Yeah, my addition to that is that nobody makes eye contact. That there is like just a lack of acknowledging that other people exist and might, like, you know, have an opinion on you, or like try and make, God forbid, try and make some kind of interpersonal connection with you that might require some kind of, like, you know, emotional obligation or something. Everybody's just like a little bit, not that they're not aware that the other people are there, but that they're like actively trying to avoid making eye contact.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, there's at least a few houses which have like black tulips at the front, so at the very, very facing of the house. There's almost some like flower pots, but if you look closer, it almost looks like a lotus root or something, where you've got all these tiny little holes, and each tulip has been placed separately in them. So it's not just about the rarity of the plant, but also the fact that we have servants who can spend the time to put each flower in individually.
Fabulous. So, Mr. Roble, you said that you were going to just go up to the front door and try to introduce yourself. Is that the plan, or do I understand that correctly?
Oh, is that what I'm gonna do?
I mean, the undeniable is the undeniable. I mean,
Yeah,
you won't be
deny you
denied.
anything.
Why would I not just walk into a stranger's house? Yeah, why not? Let's just
Sounds
up to the
good.
front door. Probably
this-
a little bit peeved that that Thop is not a company. Like, I feel like our dynamic is that often I'm like, where did you go? Like, I thought we were doing
Yeah, like you're talking to me as you walk up to the steps, fully concerned that I am there, and from the camera's point of view, I like have immediately peeled off behind you and gone sideways.
Actually, I want to check in with Mr. Thop first. So you said you were kind of looking at the sort of the perimeter of the place, right? The area.
I think it's less like, yeah, I actually think it's less of a taking in the house, but I am more so looking for the kind of that immediate thing. I think the draw to the negative spaces is that's where I want to operate. So I am looking for the park down the street where someone would have been sleeping and potentially heard something. I am looking for the person in the alleyway. I'm looking for the vendor who comes down this, or the sweeper who comes down the street. I'm making eye contact with the people on the street who are least likely to get eye contact, because I know that they are the ones who are probably seeing something.
That's terrific. Let's do a move. So I think the move that's relevant, that's triggered here, is called the information move. If you want to follow along, there's a tab that says move/reference. When you search for a clue, conduct research, or otherwise gather information, which is what you're doing, describe how you're doing it. You've already said so. And then you're going to roll with an appropriate ability. Now, taking a look at, based off how you've described it, I think the appropriate ability is probably reason, because you're just sort of like paying attention and trying to logic things out. And so roll 2d6 and then add your reason score to it.
So that's an 8 on the dice, and I believe I have 1 in reason.
You do indeed.
Yes, so 9.
So taking a look at the move, on a hit, and a 7 or higher is a hit. On a hit, you find a clue. I'll tell you what the clue is. On a 7 to 9, there's a complication, either with the clue itself or a complication you encounter while searching. I'll tell you what the complication is. We'll come back to the clue in a moment, though, and the complication. I want to check in with Mr. Roble first. So, Mr. Roble, this townhouse, 18 St. James's Street, it is a townhouse. It's like 4 stories, very narrow and tall. And it has a front garden with a little gate, and the gate's open. You can go into the garden. I will note that the flower beds seem poorly tended to compared to the neighbors. And there's a door with a ringer. What do you do?
I'm just gonna ring the door, I guess. No, probably I just knock. I'm not gonna touch their door ringer. I'm gonna knock.
You knock. And there's not an immediate response. In fact, you can hear a woman's voice on the other side, not immediately on the other side, but somewhere on the other side of the door. You can hear a woman's voice, and she's saying, yes, I know you're the cook. I know it's not your job to answer doors, but we don't have a housekeeper or a butler right now, and I think you know why. So then I suppose the lady of the house should just answer the door then. Is that the way it's going to be? And there's this argument happening about who should answer the door. What do you do, Mr. Roble?
I'm gonna open the door if it's not locked.
You can.
I shrink.
And you will see,
Jackass.
you will be greeted by when you open the door, you see a woman who looks very flustered. She's, sort of, maybe in her late 30s, early 40s, wearing a very simple tartan dress, but she definitely looks like she hasn't had the attentions of a lady's maid in some time, or much help. And I think maybe you, Mr. Roble, are more likely to notice such a thing than probably anybody else, right? She says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you wait. Can I help you?"
Yeah, I do. Okay, and as out of character question, are we like a known entity in this
No.
world? Like
No.
this is not like there is no like
Only
I
the Scotland Yard.
show up and be like, I have this. Here's my card of the league or whatever.
Yeah, only the Scotland Yard. But otherwise, the general populace doesn't know who you are. Yeah.
Great. Maybe that changes what I'm going to do with this. Maybe it doesn't. I think I'm just going to be like, I'm here about the ghost.
She says, "Oh, well, I just when I was beginning to think that we were getting past all that, I suppose. Well, as you might imagine, ever since my husband, Harold, sold that story to that ridiculous tabloid, we've been getting visitors like you." She says, "I would turn you away, but, well, I hope you don't mind my saying so, and I hope you don't think I'm being too forward, but, well, you're a very pretty young man, aren't you? Feels almost a crime to put you back out in the street."
I get that a lot. Does that mean that you're open to having a conversation? I take it from that you don't. Wait, where is your husband?
"Oh, Harold. Well, he's at his office. He's an accountant. Always very, very focused on his numbers. Please come in, Mr.
Roble.
Roble. Yes, please come in. Mr. Roble, here I'd like to ask you, Mr. Roble, how are you dressed right now? How do you look?"
I think that Francis is always the same. The infinite wardrobe is probably like just rows of the exact same thing, ensuring that I never have to clean anything, and I am never wearing the literal same outfit twice.
Very good. Very good.
But it's like, so it is the same like purple plum velvet jacket with matching shoes, and then sheer gloves that are probably black and might be a little irregular for somebody. Like the gloves are probably the part that stick out more than the outfit.
Yeah. She says, yes, please, Mr. Roble, come in. I could use a distraction, truth be told, and if it's the ghost that does it, then fine, so be it. I'm tired of fighting it, to be honest. My goodness, what lovely gloves. And she actually like takes your hand.
What rude. I think probably there is like a twitch that is almost imperceivable, like is almost it would almost be missed, and then my hand just slides out of the glove and into like an interior pocket of my jacket and pulls out an exact same glove and like re-puts on another one.
Very good. I love it.
And as she's like, also as she's saying like, come in, like I'm already moving in. Like I'm not waiting. Like I'm glad she's giving me that, but I'm not really waiting for it. I'm already like moving into the house. So I kind of envision her like a little bit. Yeah, come in, as she trails after me, walking into the middle of her house or whatever.
She'll take you into the sitting room, and here I'm going to cut over back to Mr. Pencrier. I don't actually know if Covent Garden is near St. James's Street, but I think if you want to get over there, it won't be too much trouble. So
Yeah, so it would probably be maybe 30-minute brisk walk or like 10 minutes in a cab.
okay, 10 minutes in a cab then is fine. Good. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back. I owe a clue to Ms. Thop, and then we'll continue the scenes.
Cool. So we are currently playing the St. James Street Ghost in The Between with Jason Cordova. We are going to take about a 5-minute break, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, and we will be back to continue playing right after this. In the meantime, I'd encourage you, head over to ttrpg.link/betweengame, or I'll drop some links from the amazing folks that we're playing with for you to go be able to check out some of the work that they are doing, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Yeah, Call Me Billy just asked if this is original music. It is. It's original music by Halo Hand, who does... Oh, wait, no, this one's not. This one's by Loot the Body. Halo Hand does all our stuff for Funeral Fridays, which we do last Friday of every month. But this was part of our Down We Go campaign, and Loot the Body did it. They are absolutely phenomenal. We are back live again here on Plus One EXP playing The Between with our keeper Jason Cordova. We've also got Sean F. Smith and Max Lander with us. Super excited to dive back in. We just dropped some links in the chat if you're just joining us. Also, I'll make sure all those links are down below if you're watching the video on demand on YouTube later on, which is the best place to watch things because we're able to do more with links. If you also want to check out the amazing character keeper for this game, it's in the links as well. But with that said, I'm going to hand things back over to Jason to take us back to St. James Street.
Thank you. Mr. Thop, you said that you were sort of looking around the area, seeing like who might have noticed something going on at St. James's Street, right? At 18 St. James's Street. And I owe you a clue because of your die roll. And so let's do that now. At a certain point, you'll start to hear a commotion. This is just on the street, you know, maybe a block or two away from the actual house itself. And then a nanny pushing a perambulator like stops. And she's like, "Oh my God, look." And now there are several people like, you know, kind of like startled and pointing at 18 St. James's Street. And you can see that there's a room on the 3rd floor that appears to be on fire. You can see smoke. You can see fire leaping out of the window. And people are just like freaking out. It's just like chaos, you know? What do you do?
Is the perambulator still moving?
No, it's
okay.
No,
So she did not let go of it. Like she stopped. Okay, great. I just want to make sure. What is the quickest non-internal way up to the top? Is there like an external like lattice work or anything that I can use to quickly get up to the 3rd floor?
Yes. Here's the thing though. By the time you formulate the plan, the fire's gone. The house looks perfectly normal. And even more strangely, everyone just goes back to what they were doing, like this didn't even happen. The perambulator just continues on. The vagrant who sort of initially like sort of pointed it out goes back to whittling a little wooden figurine. It's almost like it didn't happen, but you definitely saw what you saw. And I will also tell you that there is one person who still has their eye trained on 18 St. James's Street. It is a woman, a neighbor next door. She is clearly peering through a hedge, keeping her eyes on the front door of the house. What do you do? And that's your clue, by the way, though. Let's give you a...
Yeah.
I'll note your clue down for you, which is a room a room was on fire and then it wasn't. Somebody can type that if they want. But you see this woman who's clearly like being nosy, peering through the hedge. She doesn't see you though, because you're on the other side. What do you do?
I think Liam's speed is definitely go to the other side of the hedge, come up alongside the woman and peer through the hedge next to her until she becomes uncomfortably aware of me.
Good. We'll pick up with that in a moment. Mr. Pencrier, 10 minutes by cab. You're in a cab.
Mm-hmm.
And you're very nearly there when it just comes to a stop. You're not close enough, but it just comes to a stop. It seems that you can see that there's a carriage, a large carriage, at the intersection that has come to a stop. And so you've stopped for it. And you're waiting for a bit. And the cabbie looks at you and says, "I'm very, very sorry, sir. I don't know what's going on." And he sort of yells at that carriage, like to hurry up and move. This other carriage is grand. Very like dark wood, brass fixtures, beautiful looking horses. It looks very, very stately. But it's just not moving. It's just sitting there. And the cabby's he's like, very, very sorry. And he gets up and he's going over to like deal with the driver of that carriage. What are you doing?
Oh, don't worry about sorting that out. Here's close enough. I can walk the last bit. And I'll pay him with a guinea. And then like slip on out of the cab and walk straight up to the horses. Like look at the animals themselves before I even look at their like. I'm much more focused on the animal rather than necessarily even like the tack that they've kind of got attached. And yeah,
they're quite fancy. Their bits and bridles are all studded with blue gemstones. Probably not real ones, but costume blue gemstones. And
is the driver visible at this point as well?
The driver of the carriage, yes, is visible, but and he's almost like just like ignoring you. Like he clearly has orders just to like stay there. So he's just blocking the traffic. But you will hear the curtain to the carriage, the passenger carriage, slide open.
This is a public thoroughfare.
I'm very, very sorry, Mr. Pincrier, says the woman's voice from inside the carriage. The woman who's addressing you is an older woman, probably in her 60s, but quite beautiful, a black woman. Her hair done up in a very beautiful coiffure. Most striking is this large, very expensive looking sapphire on her throat, which catches the sunlight. She says, I just wanted to take a look at you in the flesh. I'm very happy you obliged by getting out of the cab and approaching.
Look, I don't know who you are. Clearly you know who I am, but you can always call at the house if you have to see me.
Mr. Pincrier, I am simply an admirer. I wanted to express my admiration for your family and the work they do. And to let you know that I think we, meaning you and your colleagues at Hargrave House and myself, shall all be getting to know each other very, very well soon.
Well, if you could perhaps be on your way, I look forward to the soon coming. But I'm afraid I have other business.
Yes, I know you do. Enjoy the rest of your day, Mr. Pincrier. I'm sorry to have troubled you. And she slides the curtain back and gives the word for her man to drive on, and they do. How are you feeling?
Frustrated that I've already been seen. And a certain amount of like, there's an edge of self-loathing in the idea that had I like been quicker to just turn up at the right area at the right time, then maybe I wouldn't necessarily have been caught in such a way. But also most of the frustration is at the, oh, that's the Pincrier boy. And like at seeing it that way around. And so it's less about the paranoia of being followed and much more about the strain at which is going to put on the actual investigation, because I could have been there 10 minutes ago if it weren't for her.
Indeed. Mr. Rubble, the ground floor of 18 St. James's Street, there's a main hall, and there's some stairs that go down to the basement servants' quarters area. But the main features are just these two large rooms on the ground floor. One of them is the sitting room where you currently are, and the other is a dining room. And just to continue giving you a lay of the house, bedrooms and office are upstairs, and at the very, very top floor is where they keep the baby. But you're in the sitting room, and here is a little paint the scene for everyone. The sitting room. It's somewhat connected to our earlier question, which is this room has a small library and enough seating for the family and a few visitors. What in this room indicates that the Beals, that's the family, that the Beals are living a little bit above their station?
I think I can see, so like because I came in unannounced, the room is not like set properly. Like it's set like how it would be for their everyday, as opposed to like how they're having visitors. And you can like see in one of the like cabinets that they have like their kind of fine china, that there are like exactly 4 sets of, like no more. uh and like some like one single nice tablecloth is like folded in a corner, but is not the one on the table that I'm like currently being sat at. And the what is currently out is like ancient, kind of like cracked, like probably was maybe okay at some point, but has clearly been like handed down through families and not like maintained particularly well. Yeah.
I love it. Tony, Sean?
So in many other houses like this, the fires would have been stoked probably even before like the upper class people get up. But all of that wood, all of that coal, it gets expensive, and so it's only just now that the cook is coming in and like bringing up some coals from the servants' quarters and stoking the fire in the room.
And grumbling because it's not her job, right? So
that is 100% what I was going to talk about in this room.
I saw Tony's face when you mentioned it and was like, oh
no. Even though it's the parlor, the room I think feels a little bit more mixed use than a formal entertaining parlor would suggest. There's, I think, maybe more signs of work as well as like home handicraft, as if this is used as more of a common space than a formal space to greet people, as would be most proper.
The cook does come up to put coal in the fire. And I think, Mr. Roble, you smell her before you see her. The cook is a squat, stout woman smelling quite strongly of tobacco and onions. And after she's done with the fire, and there's a sort of awkward pause while you wait on that, she grumbles, not my job. And Mrs. Beale says, thank you, Mrs. Thicket. And she leaves. And then Mrs. Beale says, oh, so, Mr. Roble, ghosts, is it? What is your interest in ghosts?
I take it that means you don't believe in them.
Well, I mean, it's not that I don't believe in them necessarily, Mr. Roble. It's just that ever since this happened, and it's even months later, it's just all very frustrating. I mean, poor Ginny. That's the housekeeper who was, found dead. She was a lovely girl, and she was so good with my little Roger and the baby. But, well, thanks to that ridiculous story, I haven't been able to find a replacement, and now I have to answer, or in this case, not answer, my own door. It's very frustrating, as you might imagine.
Sounds trying. What had she been? How long had she been your housekeeper?
This is good. I think we'll trigger the information move here. Let's roll some dice. Yeah, let's roll some dice. I think you're doing it with presence because you're using your charm. And so roll 2d6 and then add your presence score.
Yeah, my intention is to like walk around the room as I like no sitting, and we'll just wander around the room and only ask enough questions to get her to just keep rambling.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's how you get people like this to just tell you everything about their life secrets. Oh no. It's going great. It's going great. I rolled. Okay. I rolled a 7.
Okay, so it's not so bad. You succeed. There'll be a little complication.
Scary.
As you're, circling the room, chatting, she's mostly just expressing a lot of frustration. And she tells you what she can kind of remember about when Jenny came to work there. She has 2 children, and you get the impression that money's a little tight. And so I think that Mrs. Beale is probably a very distracted woman in general. A book falls off a little shelf in the wall. Pop. And she says, that damn book. She gets up, she grabs the book, she puts it back on the shelf. And then a moment later, thump, it falls off the shelf again. She says, she grabs the book, she rearranges the books, putting that book on another end of the shelf. But that book still falls again, thunk, on the ground. If you pick it up, the book is a novel, perhaps one that you know, that tells the story of a woman who murdered her philandering husband. And that's your clue. The complication is she gets very angry at the book that continues to fall off the shelf. And she goes, now that's quite enough. And everything on the wall just comes crashing down. Decorative plates, all the books, everything just smashes and crashes down to the ground. And how does that make you feel, first of all?
I think it probably makes me feel mildly amused. This entire circumstance probably is just like mild amusement, like these silly people and their small problems. Even just like, oh, of course the book is about a philandering husband. Like, yes, these are perfectly run-of-the-mill, like small people, small minds problems. And so there is probably part that is like trying to maintain composure while like chuckling on the inside a little bit.
Right,
Happy
yeah.
that she is like distracted by everything that's happening in the room, so that the smirks don't always get caught.
The complication is quite simply that she's very, very flustered, and now there's a great big mess in the front room. And she says, I'm very, very sorry, Mr. Roble. I'm going to have to get this cleaned up. Would you mind showing yourself out? So she leaves you to your own devices, but she's no longer really able to sit and talk with you because she's so put out by this.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm happy to leave myself out. That's totally reasonable.
Indeed.
I also probably knew that people were supposed to be joining me, so might have
Ms. Thop. You said you were trying to sneak to catch her in the bushes. Is that the plan?
Yeah, like it's like go around to their side of the hedge, peer in next to them. If they don't notice me in the first 10 seconds, then be like, you always see the weirdest things.
She'll be startled and she'll say, oh my God, I'm very, very, excuse me. I wasn't.
It's fine. I love looking also.
Well, I mean, it's certainly no business of mine what goes on in the Beals household, but what sort of neighbor would I be? What sort of community member would I be if I didn't stay abreast of things that go on around here?
Yeah,
I'm Constance
absolutely.
Head.
I mean, we're all connected to each other.
Yes. This woman, she has peering eyes, an entirely too tight bodice, streaks of gray in her hair. She introduces herself as Constance Head. She is the neighbor of the Beals. And she says, anyway, I just, I'm very sorry. And your name is?
My name is Liam.
Liam. Oh, what a lovely name, Liam. Um, would you like to come in and have a spot of tea?
Oh, I'd love to have a spot of tea and a short conversation, if that's all right.
Of course, of course. I I quite like your hair, Liam. It has a very whimsical and carefree quality.
Liam kind of shakes their head like around to let those locks kind of like flow around their face a little bit and reframe them. Um, oh, thank you. Most people find it mildly inappropriate.
Well, most people can be just, stuffy prudes.
Yeah. Um, do you oftentimes find yourself caring for your neighbors in this way?
Well, Liam, you should know that they are a rather benighted family. There, I said it.
I certainly know what benighted means. But for any of our characters watching, or any of our viewers watching, what does that term mean exactly?
Oh, like just like cursed or
Cool.
ill-favored.
Um, I can imagine. I've heard they've had all kinds of woes lately.
Yes, well, I'm sure you saw that story in the Illustrated Police News dreadful paper about the housekeeper that died.
Yes. Did you hear anything the night it happened?
Oh, yes. Come in, quick. I
figured. Yeah, we could absolutely walk and talk.
Oh yeah, she's ready to go inside. I'm going to cut over to Mr. Pencrier. Mr. Pencrier, cab finally drops you off at 18 St. James's Street. What do you do? Everything is as I've previously described.
So I think the first thing that Bram will do is take a lay of the land, looking around, and then focus in on the vagrant sat up one of the small alleys that runs off. Very much of the idea that the person who is least seen has probably seen the most things, and just like head straight over to him, then get down and pet his dog.
He says, he's a good dog, my Pythagoras.
It's a good name you've got for your dog there, sir. I missed the companion of. I had a similar beast once.
Well, there's no shortage of dogs in the city. Seems like you shouldn't have too much trouble finding another if you wanted it.
Well, I mean, you definitely seem to be the sort of person who won't just pick up any dog, but there's a bond, a certain thing that when you live beside. Excuse me, I'm terribly rude. And he'll fish out one of his hip flasks, realize that one's the water.
Get the water.
Put that back, take the other one. I'm afraid it's not much, but if you drink rum, feel free to take some. I know it can be cold out here in the streets.
He does. Are you going to try to pump him for information?
Yeah. And quite directly for it at the point, once he's drunk that, and then probably realizes that something next is coming. No,
it's great. Do the information move with presence because of you're sort of striking up a friendship, I think.
My presence is -1. And I've rolled a 6 and a 3, so that's a total of 8.
Not bad, all things considered. We'll come back to that scene in a moment. So, Mr. Roble, you do kind of have the run of the place. She's just told you to show yourself out, but you don't have to leave. What do you do?
Yeah, I think I probably will look back over my shoulder as I'm exiting the room and just confirm that she is very occupied, and do a little whisk. I'll whisk myself upstairs.
Okay, very good.
And
upstairs is bedrooms, and then one of them is there's there are 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, but one's been converted to an office. And then you can go. There's a very narrow spiraling staircase that goes up to a sort of upper, like attic area.
And I'm assuming it would not be hard to guess that like the attic is where all the interesting. Did she say that's where the baby is? There's a
Yeah, that's
baby?
the baby. Yeah, Mary Alice. She might have mentioned in off-screen conversation that that's where the baby is kept. They've refashioned it as a nursery.
Yeah, I feel like I just will look for anything that kind of like might give us an idea of like where, if there's any like remnants of Ginny about. If there's nothing, I might like if there's nothing super apparent on the second floor, it may be a little bit of a like, I'm just gonna poke my head in the attic to see if anything is strange up there.
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
think
if we've ghost hunted before, my brain is like, it's in the attic. Something is in there. There's
something's
always
got to be
something
in
in
the
the
attic.
attic. We can't not have a spooky attic.
Let's do the attic. So, everyone, as Mr. Roble climbs up into the attic, and I will tell you that the space is, it's a nursery. It's been an attic transformed into a nursery, decorated in soft pastel colors. But as you get up there, it's surprisingly devoid of furniture. It's just like one long passage, at the very opposite end of which is a crib.
These people have no taste.
And everyone, how do we know that the ghost is with Mr. Roble right now at this moment?
A heavy mobile like starts to slowly spin in the absence of any kind of breeze.
And there's the inside of the roof, not that is particularly heavily clad, but is covered in a kind of like yellowish wallpaper, and it almost like it seems like there's some like boiling or rustling that's taking place immediately underneath that.
You get to say as well, Max.
I'm gonna say a light comes on. It's the midday. There's no reason to like burn the gas for that. And like one of the lights in the attic, probably the one closest to the other side where the crib is, like flickers on.
Can we say that whatever gas is flowing in the rest of the house, even though it might be sparse, this is a moment where it starts to flicker off also?
I like it. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Mr. Roble, Mary Alice Beale, an infant, is standing up in the crib, and she stretches out her little hand to you and beckons you to come closer.
Great. A little haunted baby.
How do you feel?
Max feels uncomfortable. No, it's fine. Max is scared. Mr. Roble, I think, is probably, not actually scared. This is like not the most off-putting thing that's happened in a day that ends in Y this week. Like this is intriguing significantly more than it is any kind of scary. This is like, oh, this is interesting. Everything else is probably like a little bit of a like spark in the eyes. I'm gonna walk over.
You approach Mary Alice Beale as she beckons you with her tiny hand. And she's very young. She's like 18 months or something, maybe not even that old. And she whispers, "Lean closer."
Sure.
Closer. She wants you to get very close.
Mm-hmm.
She cups her hand of her tiny mouth as if she has something to whisper to you.
I will get as close as she wants.
Mr. Thop, Constance's head is... she's kind of fussing over you the whole time. Like, she's quite a bit older than you, and she's fussing over you almost like you are almost like a doting mother would over her daughter, right? Like, kind of casually playing with your hair and marveling at your clothes, and that kind of thing. And then finally her man brings tea, and she sits down, and tea is being poured. And she says, "Well, let me tell you, Liam, the Beals are a sad, tragic story. I mean, if we're being perfectly honest, I'm surprised they were even able to afford to purchase that house next door. They aren't exactly the sort of people who would move into a street like this, at least not in their current socioeconomic circumstances. But I commend them for their try-hard spirit. I suppose you have to admire it, right?"
Indeed, I imagine there's not many as established as you in the neighborhood. It seems like there's a lot of new faces in this place.
She says, Yes. Well, I consider myself old St. James's Street. And you're right, there are plenty of new families moving in, and, some of them are nice enough. Most of them have quite bad taste. But I do my best to be a support. I consider myself something of a pillar of the community, Solid, strong, upstanding.
It's so good that they can depend on you for support, for concern, that you take the level of interest in their goings on that you do. It's that kind of attention that that people busy trying to climb a social ladder don't notice. I'm so glad you're able to be at ease in that way.
Yes, that's what I always say, Liam. I agree completely. Now, and here I don't even need a roll. She's going to give you a free clue. She says, "You asked about poor Miss Hess. Well, I didn't really give it much thought at the time, but I was over there one afternoon chatting with Alice, and, well, it was the funniest thing. There was a decanter of port, and I'm not the sort of woman to drink port in the middle of the day, but it's all they had on hand, and so I asked for a glass, and when she went to go pour it, the decanter was perfectly empty, even though it had been full only moments before. Don't you find that odd?"
It is odd.
And then, while the housekeeper went off to fetch something else, I looked, and the decanter was filled again. That house has always had strange things going on. Always. Even before the Beals moved in.
Who lived there before them?
Oh, who can say? There have been a parade of families. Most leave for reasons that related to the alleged ghost and the various strange happenings. The servants tend to stick around, though, strangely enough. That cook, Irma Thicket, she's been there as long as anyone can remember. Your clue, though, is that crystal decanter, filling and unfilling.
I take a pinch of salt out of my pocket and put it over the top of my tea as I begin to drink. It's so nice to be able to have a home in which one can enter in and not have to worry about finding staff, though, don't you think?
Oh, well, I mean, Liam, there are so many. Everyone has so many different interpretations of decorum and appropriateness, and, well, I suppose. And then she kind of says, and then she just changes subject. She says, I hope you don't think I'm being too forward, but I actually happen to have 2 tickets to the opera tonight, and I don't have anyone to go with me. Perhaps you'd like to join?
I don't have any plans at the moment for this evening. I suppose I could.
Splendid. Excellent. Excellent. Yes, wonderful. Ah, yes, that's very good. Very, very good. And I'm going to give you a condition, your price for your free clue, which is you are marked by Constance Head.
Okay.
Just note that condition down in your conditions section. I shall cut back over to Mr. Pincrier. So, Mr. Pincrier, we're kind of wrapping up our day phase here, get last little bits in. Do I owe you a clue? Did you roll? You rolled dice, right?
I have rolled. Yes, I rolled an 8.
I think this vagrant goes for the flask that you've handed him. And as he's drinking from it, you notice that it's not rum coming out of the flask at all. It's thick red blood pouring into his mouth. And he's not swallowing it. He's just letting it dribble down his chin. And he's just talking to you like it's no big deal as this blood dribbles down his chin and spatters on the ground. This blood that came out of your flask. And he says, yes, I see a lot of things that go on around here. And more blood is coming out of his mouth, like much more than he actually drank from the flask as he talks. It's just glugging out and spilling down as he speaks to you. And again, he's just completely unconscious of it. He says, you don't look like the kind of person who normally comes around here.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I'm a street person, and even I can tell that, well, your clothing is not exactly, the type that gentlefolk would normally wear, he says as he spatters some blood right on the hem of your coat.
Well, my father may have been gentlefolk, but these are everybody's streets. You know that. Now, ghost. Tell me about the ghost.
And he gets this wide, wild look in his eyes. And he smiles, his red blood-stained teeth. And he says, oh, I think they're here now and they want to have a word. And you start to feel a tightening around your neck, like fingers wrapping around your neck. Your clue is the flask suddenly pouring blood. The complication are these spectral fingers wrapping around your throat. The ghost, it seems, is mobile to an extent. It's getting tighter and tighter. What do you do?
So as much as I'm fighting for breath, there will then be the point of taking out the flask of holy water, and almost like kind of going through like a habitual process in the same way that it might like dash cologne onto my own hands, sort of thing, and then just like just like rub it up and sort of like apply it to the area.
I love it. Let's do the day move. So the day move is their sort of basic risk move. It says when you do something risky or face something you fear, this is kind of like facing something you fear, but also trying to, shake the ghost off. Name what you're afraid will happen if you fail or lose your nerve.
My biggest fear is that the ghosts will sort of like permanently latch onto me, at least for the interim.
Intriguing. You have to roll sensitivity because it's a supernatural thing. So roll sensitivity. If you mark the holy water, which should be in your personal quarters, if you mark that box, you get to roll with advantage, which means you roll 3 dice and take the 2 highest. And then sensitivity.
I will, seeing as how I am using that as part of the process. So that's a 2, a 4, and a 5. So take the 4 and the 5, adding 1 for a total of 10.
Nice, very good. You do what you intended. You get to describe it. Just describe how you ease the ghost off of you. Like, what does this look like?
So it's more that I'm reasserting normality. Like, there's a certain, despite the fact that like if you were to be watching, it looks like I'm just like applying cologne to my face. And it's the fact that the more casual and like if it were a battle of wills, that would only strengthen the resolve of the ghost here. But by the fact that it's applying something which is anathema to it, coupled with a completely sort of like casual motion, is enough almost for it to like fade back.
Good. I love it. Thank you. Mr. Roble, Mary Alice Beale is whispering in your ear. She says, "Speak to me of your place, immortal. Speak to me of the cathedral." What do you say?
Just again, the like same kind of self-assured like smirk happens, and I'm just gonna be like, "You first."
And she just smiles and gently strokes your cheek with her little fingers. And she says, "Pretty doll, pretty, pretty doll." And then she just plops down and goes back to gurgling like an infant. And you'll see she has in the crib a wax doll that looks like you. It is wearing the little purple plum velvet jacket. It's shaped like you, your features. You might even have those little tiny gloves. And I'm going to give you a condition, the wax doll. Note it.
Do I take the doll?
I don't know. Do you?
I mean, I think so.
If you take it, add it to your personal quarters as well.
Yeah. I think yeah, I'm gonna take it. Or I will try to take it. I will reach for the doll.
Very good, very good. You can take it, it's fine. She just babbles like babies stupidly babble. And we're getting ready to wrap up this day phase. Let's just check in with everyone first. So, Ms. Thop, you don't have to keep your opera date, but you are invited, and she's hoping you'll come.
Chat really wants me to kill this character right off the bat. Apparently, it's a very common move.
It's a very
in the
common
game.
move to kill Constance Head. Yeah.
I sincerely, this is like Liam values the constant observer in a lot of these situations. So this is absolutely something he's going to nurture. Or they're going to nurture.
Yeah. I love Constance Head. You can ignore the chat.
So I will absolutely show up.
Sounds good. That'll wrap your day phase then. Mr. Pencrier, Pythagoras goes in for a scratch, and the bloody-mouthed vagrant tips his hat to you. And anything you want to do to close out the scene?
I will give the vagrant some money. I'll actually give him like more than I gave the cab driver. And I hope that his night goes smoothly.
Indeed. And Mr. Roble, after you pocket the wax doll, we don't have to see anything else, but I'm curious if you want to just put a little cap on the scene.
Yeah, I think I will. I think I'm gonna like just pull. I like take a couple steps away, as if to leave, and then have like a moment of remembrance and turn back and like pull a small like. Guys, I don't know anything about babies. Like a small sweet of some variety, like whatever out of a pocket. I'm like, am I gonna make it choke?
Joke. Maybe it's a very crumbly sort of thing.
Yeah. Look, I know a lot about babies. As long as you're saying you don't want to imperil this baby, that baby's going to eat whatever sweet thing you give it. Babies do not.
Yeah, like
not say no to sweet things.
They're 18 months, right? They can chew or swallow.
She'll be fine.
And like put it, just like hand it to her, and then on my way out of the front door, I'm gonna like take off the other like the left hand glove and like leave it just before I exit the door.
Nice. Very good. I love it. Thank you. That concludes the day phase. So if you want to follow along, there's a little phase tracker on the left-hand side of where the characters are, the far left. We just did the day. And so now let's go to the dusk. So the dusk is mostly upkeep and kind of preparing for the night phase. We don't have any character moves that we need to deal with right now, so we'll skip that step. Next, we're going to talk about Hargrave House. One of the things we do during the dusk phase is we explore a room in Hargrave House, because exploring Hargrave House is important, but also it's kind of assumed that you're all sort of meeting back up and sharing information, and you all know everything that the others know, right? Unless you purposely keep something back, it's assumed everyone knows everything. And this might be the room that this dusk phase is taking place in, right? And we're going to do the trophy room. And if you scroll down, you can kind of see the list here. The trophy room. There were hunters living in Hargrave House before you. Trophies from their encounters with the supernatural can be found in the trophy room. Please describe one.
There's a really, really old one, like really old. Like it looks like it was like hand carved out of some like old clay. And it pictures like a figure and a multi-headed beast. And the figure for sure looks exactly like me.
So in the same way that you might see a like shark's jaws displayed, there is like the jaw section of an impossibly like broad canine. Like the snout is much shorter than it would be, but the teeth kind of like bend in the wrong direction.
I think though I think every hunter is somewhat unique. There have been a lot of hunters like Liam in the past who don't necessarily look for the most obvious form of trophy. So Liam is oftentimes seen sorting through different drawers in the trophy room that some hold what I think some people would deem less auspicious trophies. And the drawer that they are currently looking into, there's like a set of shiny rocks, a weirdly bent twig, but then there's literally a black sock with some sort of misshapen object in some obviously rusted brownish red stain on the end of it that Liam is delightfully eyeing.
Very nice. Thank you. Now, everyone is going to tell me what their hunter is going to do during the night phase, or what you'd like to do, because again, we're going to do what I want to do, but I still want to hear what you want to do. There's no discussion here. You just say what you intend to do. And then if everybody, after you hear everyone, if you want to revise, you can make a revision. But I'll start with Liam, because you do have a date. Is that what you're doing tonight?
Yep.
Okay. I think you'll be expected to bring a cab round to her house, right? So that's sort of, I think, how that will go, probably in the beginning. Let's check in with Mr. Roble. What would you like to do tonight?
Is this assuming we know what the other people are doing?
You will know what the others are doing, yes.
Right.
Unless they specifically say I'm going out secretly or something. But yeah.
I maybe want to investigate Mrs. Head's house while she's out at the opera.
Very good. Yeah, it seems like the ghost does have some range. So, yeah. What about you, Mr. Pencrier?
I intend to spend the evening looking back over the family books.
Oh, good.
Essentially trying to read up any information about protection against ghosts.
No, that's fabulous. I love it. And so, if there's no revisions, then we shall
just for flavor. I don't think Liam intends to tell anybody that they are doing this. However, I'm 100% on board with me walking out the door and Francis being like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, because you'll be all dressed up, right? I mean,
yeah, like what passes for dressed up for Liam is like a longer jacket than their normal jacket, still trimmed in red. Gloves that, as long as light isn't shown directly on them, look like they're fancy, but if they are worn and grubby. And the dirt has been kind of more fashionably smeared across their face, as if some areas have been cleaned, but some areas have been intentionally left duskier. Very Victorian contouring is the vibe you get here.
I love it. That's great. Fabulous. Okay, we'll figure out the scenes when we do the night phase. Let's talk about the unseen. Okay, this is the other thing that's quite unique in the between. The unseen is a scene that is taking place at the same time on the same night as what you all are doing. It's a scene taking place somewhere else in the city. If you'll recall from my little introduction, I said that one of the things we're going to do is we're going to paint a portrait of London, right? And we're going to show London. And this is one of the ways we're going to do it, our version of London, right? And so the unseen is something that you'll be narrating in between your hunter scenes, and we'll bounce back and forth between them. Now, the unseen has no direct connection to the hunter scenes. It's literally not part of the story. But it can have, and indeed should have, thematic connections or visual connections or sensory connections. And so, for example, if in the unseen you describe a sex worker dying of consumption, and you describe this person coughing blood into a bowl, perhaps in the hunter scene, you describe on a table in Constance's house, there's a wide bowl with red flowers in it, right? That would be a subtle allusion to the unseen, right? It could be more obvious things too, like an emphasis on candles or something in both scenes or something like that, right? Just anything that draws a sort of thematic connection between them. If you do this, that's called an echo in the night. And that's one of the ways you get experience points during the dawn, is if you get an echo in the night. And it's also vice versa. So you can work something into your unseen that happened in the hunter scenes, right? So, and the unseen is also a timer. Once we do the last part of the unseen, that signals that the night phase is almost over. So that's another function of it. I'd like you to follow along. If you go to the tab on the Keeper that says London at Night, the Unseen, that's where we want to be right now. And our unseen tonight is going to be... This is always so hard because they're so good. And I can say that because I didn't write them all. But the ones I wrote are also good. Let's do Brown's Hotel. So this is the third row, second from the left. Brown's Hotel. I'll highlight it in red so you can see it. None of the 117 rooms at Brown's Hotel on Albemarle Street are the same, though they each have housed some of the most fashionable people you'll find in London or anywhere. A concierge, Teddy Miller, delights in spying on the hotel's posh clientele. Now we have 4 prompts here. Because we only have 3 players, I'll do one of them. The first prompt, however, is going to be for Tony. I'll put that there for you. The second prompt is going to be for Sean. And then I'll do the third one. And then Max, you can do the last one. I think at this point, we will take a 5-minute break so you can read your unseen prompt and be thinking about it. So, Tony, I'll give it over to you.
We are going to work on our unseen prompts. I know we have a lot of fans who are in it. And remember, for the Go Live tweet over on YouTube and Facebook, if you're watching either of those, there's a link to the Character Keeper, so you could look at the Brown's Hotel, or if you have a link to it from some other way, you could look at it, and you could absolutely suggest what you would answer for any of these questions in the chat while we're taking our 5-minute break. We're not going to use any of those, but I would love to hear them and read them, and love to hear about the other things that you think should be happening. And we'll be back in right about 5 minutes to continue playing The Between. We're live here again on Plus One EXP. We got some great comments in the chat about other people's favorite unseens, Brown's Hotel, and Madame Morvain. It's a possible misspelling.
Madame Morvain's, yes.
Are their favorite unseen. And then Brown's Hotel always makes I'm a Trex think of the Unquiet playbook. Like Teddy is practically a ghost in that place, slipping about quietly and unseen, peeping on what people are doing. Some deep love for this part of the game, and I think Sean was saying some great things about it too. We can talk about it, maybe a little more debrief, but I have to talk now about my thing.
Oh wait, are we starting? Or...
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Okay. All right, here we go. The night phase. Brown's Hotel. Tony.
Yeah.
Teddy puts his ear up against the door of a wealthy young bachelor. What does he hear that makes him desperately want the life of this young bachelor?
Virtually ensuring that I get a chance to trigger an echo. I want to, I think what we hear at first, Teddy hears almost sounds like the vocal warm-ups of a singer. And indeed, in part, that is, I think, what it is, until it crescendos into more of a moaning noise and less of a singing noise before he passes on.
I quite liked this idea of how Ms. Thop looks when they're getting ready to go out, right? And given that Mr. Roble is such an aesthetic character, I think it'd be fun to have a scene where we sort of see the two of you getting ready to go out, right? Maybe you're not going together yet, but a scene in the entry hall would be lovely. Role play.
I have a pitch here that I love if it's the reverse get ready. Like Liam does not know how to dress up, and you do not know how to be inconspicuous. And so I think we see like, us maybe arrive at that point of departure, and I take some of the dirt off of my face, and I just rub it down the side of your face as I'm getting ready, so that you don't appear as out of place on the street.
Well, while I acknowledge that the need for that, I hate every second of it, especially the part where you're touching my face. But I think in return, I probably, since I've decided now that an outfit is never worn twice, like in return, I think I potentially give you like today's uniform. To try and like help you, because nothing you have can be like there is no saving what you have. You cannot wear that to the
I love
opera.
that. So like my blood red cloak is now covered in this longer purple, like probably normal length on you, even though we were both somewhat thin. I think Liam is short, and so it has the kind of a sense of more of an overcoat on me than it does on you. Yes. And you managed to tie it off like very fashionably, in a way that Liam would never have been able to figure out how to do.
Yes, ill-fitting but of quality is better than fitted but no quality.
And then, meanwhile, while you're doing that, like I'm like untucking and like maneuvering some of your clothes just to move them off. And no matter how awkward we see Liam make them, like they still look incredibly fashionable in that way that almost no one can achieve. But you consistently make just happen effortlessly.
Fabulous. I love it. Are you both taking a cab together then? You're going to the same place, even though for different reasons. Or are we? I don't know.
I will offer to arrange the cab, since I feel like you also cannot be trusted to show up in the appropriate cab. Or probably, and maybe I don't know what money is in our, but like maybe don't even have the money to cover the like more appropriate cab for taking somebody to the opera.
I love the idea that we do this. It is a constant reversal. Like we kind of flash back to earlier when we pulled up. Like you were in the cab and I was on like the standing part on the back for servants, and like you go to get in this cab and I give you like a and like motion you to the back while I climb in.
And I try and awkwardly sit almost like it's side saddle. Like I try and find a sit that makes me look elegant and just struggle with it for like the next 5 minutes of being on the back of this.
Very good. Let's cut over to Mr. Pincryer. Let's talk about this book. Let's paint the scene about the book, everyone. How do we know that this book has been passed down for centuries through many generations of Pincryer monster hunters? Just looking at the book, or smelling it, or touching it.
Max, go ahead.
Family book.
Exactly. I'll have start or end. So yeah, you go first.
I was gonna say, I think you can see the iteration, right? Like the book is a kind of like a living, evolving object. So while it is like it has information where somebody might have a first observation of some kind of creature, and then somebody a different generation is like, actually, that's not even what that was, or we've renamed it this. And so it's just like riddled with marginalia.
So the thing that I was thinking particularly about it is it's old. It's older than paper, at least as we'd consider it now. And so all of the pages themselves, they tend to be the same. So it tends to be like a calf vellum. So it's particularly effective as a thing. And you can tell that although it's been having to like be added in and having all of these additional sections like being added in at the back, they're still being sourced to try and find the exact right size, the exact right type of this thing. And it's a book of skin.
Tony, any thoughts on the book?
No, because my spouse just messaged me right in the middle of that.
Fair enough. So you're going through this book, and I'm going to give you an information move off of it, but in a bit. I'd like to know, since you're a monster hunter by like sort of hereditary inheritance, right? Like you are a monster hunter. You were born a monster hunter. But that doesn't mean there have been other Pincryers at Hargrave House. You just happen to be the Pincryer at Hargrave House. I'm curious, like, how does your, and this is just for you, how does your personal quarters indicate that this is just another job for you? This is just another place to kill monstrosities.
So of all of the rooms that are in the house, it's still like it's. I can't imagine that the decor in general is anything but Spartan throughout much of the house. But here in particular, there's all of these spaces where almost like form paintings are hung up that tend to be then swapped out and replaced. And like to a modern audience, it would almost look like that same like corporate flatness that you get from like a mid-tier hotel. Whereas at this point, like there's absolutely nothing that is personalized about it at all, with the exception of like an actual like blanket covering down at the bottom of the bed, but everything else is just perfectly beige, perfectly normal.
I love it. Thank you. Let's go back to Brown's Hotel. Sean, Teddy, our ghostly concierge, rummages through the personal effects of an actress staying at the hotel while she is out, what does he find that makes him desire her or desire to be her?
So there's a certain sense of things almost that Teddy is able to swap out, particularly if there are things that it would take a significant amount of skill to notice if there was the same thing. And there's a bottle of absinthe. The bottle itself is kind of like mostly sort of like clear edges of brown. The liquid obviously within being vividly emerald. And at the point almost where he's going through to make the trade, he notices that even the way in which the bottle has been blown, there's like an embossed symbol of a windmill on it. And not only is this going to be notable, but this is a bottle that's been given to her from the Moulin Rouge. And just this whole idea of the spaces that she moves in and the places that she sees, Teddy could only imagine what it would be like to just be in that space.
So, Mr. Thop, Mr. Roble, the hansom cab pulls up to 20 St. James's Street, say, the next door, and all of the lights in Ms. Head's home are out. No candelabra, no candles, no gas lamps, no lanterns. It's perfectly dark. At 18 St. James's Street, however, every light, every window is illuminated. They've lit every gas lamp, every candle in the window, every chandelier. It is glowing from the inside. And as you step out of the cab, you hear the creak of the garden gate at 18 St. James's Street opening of its own accord, practically beckoning you inside. Mr. Roble, what do you do?
I mean, I think I'm gonna go around to like the side of the cab that isn't facing, still trying to like not be seen by Miss Head's house, like keeping on this side, and I'm just gonna like knock on the door a little bit to get Throp's attention and be like, Throp, do you still want to go to the opera? And like motion to the house with every light on, like motion to 18. Understanding that I could walk through that house, but like if somebody was going to check out what is happening in a spooky nighttime situation, that you are uniquely equipped to do that in a way that I am not. Beckoning back to your continually pointing out how conspicuous I am.
I spin around in what I imagine is a very fancy and enchanting way and say, but I'm not dressed for it. And you are. It's always good to grow ourselves just a little bit. And then I put my hand on the other side of your slightly too perfect faiths and smear more dirt on the other side. And I'm gonna press into your hand. I was going to unless you have something else you want me to press into your hand. I had written down on my character sheet just now that I had a bronze spyglass with crystal lens, because it seemed like a good thing to take to the opera with you that I could pull out of my witch's cupboard. But I am happy to pass it to you so you can see things more clearly.
Great.
You can add that to your personal quarters.
Great. I will mildly chuckle and scoff, and then I'm going to do an actually good-looking twirl and walk into and head to like the alleyway in between the houses to like give it a moment to like the carriage can go, and if they're gonna come, if this head's gonna come out, hide out there for a hot second.
Miss Head does not come out of 20 St. James's Street. The cab is waiting in case to take you to the opera.
Right.
But there appears to be no activity in her house at all.
That's great.
What do, Liam?
You get the side by side of us both walking up to the door at the same time. Hello? Mrs. Head?
The door is ajar.
Pull a little piece of chalk out of my pocket, or charcoal out of my pocket, and squiggle some things on the door frame real quick before I step across. Mrs. Head? Miss Head?
You hear a voice that says, "Come in."
Are you not feeling well? Did you not want to go to the opera anymore? And I step in.
You see a figure, presumably Constance, sitting in a chair in the front hall in the darkness. Just the hem of her gown illuminated by the streetlight. She says, "I'm not exactly feeling myself right now."
Oh, I understand. Would you like me to call a doctor?
No. Come inside and close the door behind you.
I step inside and I close the door.
What are you doing in the meantime, Mr. Roble?
I think I'm going to keep an eye out with this handy spyglass. I'm just gonna like find a nice little perch in an alleyway in somewhere that is very dark, and watch, like alternate watch between the two houses to see if there is any kind of like, if I can see anything of interest really. Like, do the lights go out? Do they flicker? Do they come back on? I've now like
Take the
seen-
information move.
Cool.
Take it with reason. And I think, just to make this more interesting, the driver of the cab says, "Oh, you forgot this." And it's the wax doll. And he gives it to you, then goes back to his position. But please make this move at disadvantage because of the wax doll condition. You will roll 3 dice and take the 2 lowest.
I already have a -1. I also need everybody to know that, as you said, you've forgotten this and said the wax doll. My cat knocked my door open in the room that I'm in, and I can't see the cat, so I just saw the door open without any inclination. It's a very upsetting moment for me.
Now, I will tell you, it's going to be a disadvantage, but if you're going to mark the magnifying glass as you're like looking around, if you're using it to actually like look at things, that will cancel it out. So just mark regular. If you mark it, you'll just do regular dice instead of disadvantage.
Cool. Great. Yes. Sounds wonderful.
So it'd just be 2d6 plus whatever your
-1.
reason is.
Oh wow, that's a 3.
We shall talk about what's going to happen in a moment. This might be a good opportunity for a Janus Mask. So the Janus Mask, of course, will basically change your die roll to a 7 to 9, but you can choose to mark it after you hear what I narrate. Because what happens is, as the cab driver places the wax doll in your hand, something flies out of 18 St. James's Street. The door is open, the gate is open, and something just is hurled, a cake knife perhaps, and just sticks into his throat deep, spatters your face with blood, and he just collapses dead at your feet. If you're okay with that being the case, then we'll let it ride. Otherwise, you can mark the Janus Mask to avoid this.
No, that's fine.
Very good.
Am I evil? That's fine.
I do think I want to talk about your cathedral in a bit, because I think your interaction with Mary Alice Beale would have probably scarred the reflection, but we'll talk about that later. Let's go to Mr. Pencrier. Mr. Pencrier, what is the nature of your research? What are you actually trying to figure out?
Primarily, how to banish a ghost. Even though, especially in the case of knowing that the beast is itself in like spiritual form, it is the sort of thing that Bran knows. But every single time, still, in the same way that sitting down and looking at a list, it's important to go back through part of this process, part of the rituals that he refuses to acknowledge he does, is to look at the appropriate pages, to read it through, to write down on a scratch pad somewhere, bit of blotting paper, what the steps are, what the times.
Take the information move. It would be with reason, and if you mark the book, I don't know if it's available to be marked. I think it is. If you mark it, you get advantage on the dice. So.
It is available to mark. I will mark it. I'm adding nothing. That's a 2, a 3, and a 4. So it's a 7 overall.
Very good. I'll give you the clue now, and then I'm going to pick up the scene after that. The clue is this. I'm just checking my list right now. For people watching the video, in the between, you have a list of clues, and then as the keeper, you read through them and you pick the one that you think makes the most sense, and you adjust it as you need to make it fit the scene. And here's what I think. You're reading about hauntings, ghosts, that kind of thing. And frequently, the thing that will cause the ghosts to stick around, or the dead person to stick around and not pass on to the next life, is if they suffered some kind of very intense emotional trauma. And discovering the root of that emotional trauma is key to assuaging the spirit and letting it move on, right? That's your clue. And as you're caught up in your research, you're the only person at the house, but you hear glass breaking from Liam's room. And that's on the second story. It sounds like second story window being busted open. What do you do?
So I've already been I'm holding the family weapon, but almost like absent-mindedly playing the very, very tip of the whip, which is most of a sword tip, and kind of like absent-mindedly just rubbing that up against my skin at the same point, almost like you do with like a cutthroat razor. So we'll immediately then just shift the grip on that, leave the door wide open and march straight the central route through the house rather than the backward servant quarters. Largely, if this is somebody being opportunistic, the volume and the directness about it is enough to makes if it's a petty burglar, then this is probably enough to scare them off. And yeah, and head straight up to Liam's door. And if it's not locked, throw it wide open.
I love it. We'll come back to that. Let's return to Brown's Hotel for a moment, though. This is for me. Teddy draws a hot bath for a pair of good-looking young men staying in the same room. In what ways does Teddy help bring the erotic subtext of the scene to the fore? Why did he choose this one? I don't know.
Say it for me one more time.
It's for me. I'm narrating it. Yeah. But if you just want me to read it again.
No, yeah, I got distracted again.
Teddy draws a hot bath for a pair of good-looking young men staying in the same room. In what ways does Teddy help bring the erotic subtext of the scene to the forefront? And I think that the two men are sitting in the bathtub together, and they have ordered room service. And Teddy is there essentially just waiting on them while they canoodle, while they laugh, while they drink champagne. And at a certain point, they click their fingers at him because they want a bit of dessert. But in this case, it's literal dessert. Teddy picks up a shiny cake knife and slices into a beautiful piece of red velvet cake and plates it. And then he brings it to them. And while they feed each other cake and sip champagne, he pours in another kettle of hot water. He throws in handfuls of flowers and bath salts, and then exits and quietly closes the door. Thop. Constance's head is not in a good place. She opens her eyes, and you know this because they are glowing with pale green light. And we know, Thop, that you have dark entities that are always in your peripheral vision. Mm-hmm. And when Constance opens her eyes, you feel fingers gently stroking the back of your neck. The entities that are always near are very, very excited about what's happening right now. Please make the night move. The night move says, when you face something you fear, name what you're afraid will happen if you lose your nerve.
Liam is young. It is hard to tell age and a number of other things about Liam from their presentation, but what is kind of universally agreed on is Liam does not appear old in any way, shape, or form. It's probably one of the true knowable things about Liam from looking at them. This is, I think, it's not the first time Liam has found themselves in a similar predicament. And the greatest fear is that they will immediately give into that temptation, that there will be a succumbing to these darker urges. And the fear is mostly not so much of the spirits themselves, though that is certainly terrifying. It is of the unknown of what comes after.
And then per the move, I have to say how it's worse than that. It is worse than that because the spirits, they're going to get what they want from you. you are not only going to succumb, you are going to open yourself up to them, and they're going to reach down deep, and they are going to yank out your essence, your soul, and devour it lustily, leaving you but a husk at Constance Head's feet. Constance Head's feet. Now, you have a choice. If you don't want to tempt this particular fate, you can back out by leaving the house. Or, if you do want to tempt it, you roll dice. Bear in mind, the Janus Mask is always there to save you. So.
Right. Also, I think this is a fate that Liam is well prepared for. And so I think what we see is this in like the drawing room, the public space, the parlor? Is this kind of
just like an entry hall?
Entry
right
hall.
Walk in. Yeah.
So she's just kind of in the back corner of it.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I think as we see Liam, step closer, draw near, in a somewhat open capacity as they reach down into their pocket, and maybe we get an overlay of Teddy salting the bathwater and the sense of intimacy that's drawn from that, before Liam throws salt all over this creature.
Very good.
Or throws salt all over Constance in this moment and utters a Latin phrase equivalent to depart.
Is that one of your items from your personal quarters?
It is, yeah. Salt.
You can mark it and roll.
Which is just like a normal ass thing almost every character I create has in their pockets, because why would you ever not have salt with you? Come on, people.
It's totally fair. You're going to roll with advantage if you mark it.
Okay.
And that would be, so here's the thing. I was going to put you at disadvantage because you're marked by Constance Head, so it'll just balance it out to be a flat roll.
Cool.
But it'll be with sensitivity, which is your good stat. So
right.
2d6 plus sensitivity.
And that is 13.
Nice. You do what you intended. In this case, you hold steady, and I'll also give you an extra benefit or advantage. I'll describe the benefit later, but go ahead and just describe how you keep this situation under control.
It is almost as we see this happen, like we see this salt hit the we see this salt kind of break over Constance. It's hard to even tell what is happening because of how dark it is, except for this shadows that were kind of clinging to Constance's flesh and the greenness of her eyes scatter off and kind of retreat into the darkness. And what feels like all too practiced of emotion, Liam draws in just intimately close to Constance at that moment, like lips almost brushing hers, as they catch her, and she kind of collapses into his arms, or their arms.
Fabulous. I'll give you your bonus when we get back. Mr. Roble, the cabbie is dead at your feet. Blood pouring out of the wound made by the cake knife, staining the leather of your shoes, and also you're flecked with the blood. If you look back into the doorway of 18 St. James's Street, you will see Alice Beale floating in the entry hall, a few feet off the air, her hands outstretched, Christ-like. What do you do, Mr. Roble?
I am going to remove the cake knife from the cabbie's neck. And today's outfit has already been ruined, so I'm going to wipe it off on my jacket as I walk towards Lady Beale. I know she's not a lady, Miss Beale.
Yeah.
When you step into the hall, you see that she is floating in the air. The sort of central hall area has got quite a high ceiling, and she's floating at this point about 8 feet off the ground, maybe a little higher. and her head is tipped back and her mouth is ajar, almost unnaturally wide open, as if something is holding her up from inside of her mouth. She's just hanging there. And what do? Night move. What are you afraid is going to happen if you lose your nerve right now?
I think there's like a good amount of pity that I have, while recognizing that like their problems tend to like bore me. I think there's a good amount of pity I have for Ausbiel, and so I do feel like there is like a concern for her actual safety. Apparently unlike the cabby, but yes, I feel like if I don't deal with this, she's gonna die, and it's not her fault.
It's worse than that. She is going to die, and you will be implicated in her murder plus the murder of the cabbie. If you wish to continue, roll sensitivity, regular dice, unless you're working in a personal quarters item.
Well, I gotta save her. You're just gonna die anyway. Also, it makes sense. I did pick up the knife. I could see now how that leap might be made. I rolled an 8.
Very good. You keep it together, and she won't die automatically. You'll have a chance to save her. You can see impressions on her neck as the ghost squeezes on her neck and some invisible force twists her head. She has a look of utter terror on her face. She knows what's happening, but she can't do anything about it. What do you do? Your nerves are steeled. You can take strong action here.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna stand there, and I think I'm just gonna say, leave her be. There are better targets.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And just like do a face-off, confident event, like battle of wits with. That is my course of action. Is I am just going to be confident enough that you're going to be shook a little bit, ghost dude.
I love it. We'll come back to it. Mr. Pincrier, you step into Liam's room, and you see a man splayed out on the ground, on the floor. He seems to have just hurled himself through the second-story window. An impressive feat, considering there's nothing to stand on out there. And he's face down, tangle of long blonde hair. He's quite underdressed for the weather. What do you do?
I'll move immediately towards him, take the very, very tip of the whip, and cut his neck to like try and hit a major artery there.
Oh, very good. When you do so, you discover the man has no blood. It's just flesh. Pale, cold flesh. And he looks up at you and says, well, that was very rude. And now we go to our last stop at Brown's Hotel. Max, Teddy returns to his tiny, dingy flat in East London. What do we see in Teddy's apartment that shows how he tries to incorporate bits of glamour into his dull, gray life?
Yeah, I think it's quite literal. Teddy has been, whenever is possible, whenever he thinks he can get away with it, has been pocketing items from the hotel, from the guests, and has made kind of Not in a serial killer kind of way, like a little altar of like this alternate like glamorous life of everything that kind of can remind him of specific guests. And so, in some instances it might be like that leftover bottle of absinthe, but in others it's like a ring that was left behind, and just kind of has this little corner of his place that is also like uncharacteristically clean, like clearly cleans this like 2 foot by 2 foot section, and everything else is just kind of piled away.
Fantastic. Liam, I'll give you a choice for your bonus. You can clear that condition marked by Constance, or you can find a clue related to the threat. It's up to you.
I think I'll take the clue, actually.
Okay. So you'll still be marked by Constance's head, but the clue is this. She's clutching in her hands a stack of love letters, but they are love letters from another time, from like the 1700s, tied with a red ribbon. She's coming out of her fugue state, or whatever that was. Just give me the little end scene. This is the end of your night phase. Just a little capstone here with her. What does this look like?
I think I think the last thing we see is me carrying Constance upstairs.
Nice. Good. I love it. This is a much different outcome for Constance.
Oh, I'm leaning hard against what people normally do with Constance.
Yeah. This is the luckiest Constance head in our entire cosmology. It's very good. Good. Let's cut back over to Mr. Roble. Mr. Roble, I like this sort of like staring down the ghost. I'm not going to make you roll. Instead, I'm going to give you a condition, which is a much better target because you yourself declared this. And tell me how you get control of the situation. What does it look like as Alice is relinquished from the ghost's grip?
Yeah, I think it kind of parallels what's happening in the next house, in that she kind of floats softly down from where she is, like in the air, and kind of places herself almost directly into my arms. And like, I will mimic a similar motion of like going upstairs and putting her to bed, but from the internal view, I can also like feel that presence leave her, and probably do like a similar either like brush, feel like a wisp of a hand on my cheek, and like feel it leave her and slightly touch me, and then like move on for the time being, and then we'll put her to bed.
Nice. I love it. And Mr. Pitkrider, this man who is very lovely in his sort of pale, ghostly way, he stands up. He's wearing a sort of kind of loosely strung pirate shirt and quite tight trousers. And he gets up, and you can see the flesh on his neck where you tried to find an artery rapidly sewing itself up and healing. And he says, I'm flouting the rules a bit here. I can't stay long unless you say that I can. Do I have your permission to stay? I have something very important to share with Hargrave House.
You have 90 seconds. Go.
Oh, why the rush? I mean, I'm kind of an old friend of Hargrave House. I mean, I know you don't know me, but I think there are some people around here who might appreciate seeing me again. How many seconds am I down to?
You've got a further 38.
Oh, just say the words. Say, You, your name, give permission to Julius to stay in Hargrave House. Please just speak them. I promise I'm no danger.
I, Branpin Crier, give permission to Julius to stay in Hargrave House until the next sunset.
Splendid. Well, I could use a drink. And we'll end the night phase there. If it's all right, Tony, I'd like to take just a quick break before we do the dawn phase.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, it sounds good.
Like a 3-minute
so
break.
we have been playing The Between, and very good. And this has been something in the chat, Jason. And I know you know this, but I also think it's always good to tell people, such a good GM, such a good GM. And even more to your credit, you've written a system that empowers people to be really good keepers and runners of games by inviting other people to kick in and then build on that. But your skill is excellent. I'm very excited to come back and do the dawn phase in about 5 minutes. We'll be back to finish up part 1 of our playthrough of The Between with Jason Cordova right after this. Just a reminder, because I'm not going anywhere, and I would love to remind you, I'm going to drop some links to how you can follow some of these great people. Check out work they have going on. Max got an amazing RPG called Himbos. I've got a link to one of Sean's great works also, too. We'll drop a link for how you can find out more about The Between. Also, right now, we are in our last day of itch funding Through the Void, which is our rules light, OSR-inspired space crawler RPG that's all player-facing, emergent narrative, anti-canon stuff that if you like cool tech that invites players to help paint the scene, like is in The Between, is going to have some great elements for that. Additionally, we are about to launch in a couple of weeks over on GameFound 13 Hunters, which is Dom Leoti's amazing anthology, system-agnostic anthology of 13 bounty hunters ready to drop into your game. You can find out more about those at the links that I'm going to drop in the chat in just one moment. And we are back live again here on Plus One EXP. Oh, I've got a couple people who switched places. I will fix that in just one moment. But we are going to be finishing up the last little bit, I think, of our part one of the Between two-part series. We're going to be playing today, and then we're going to be back again playing tomorrow. It's been just an absolute thrill to sit down and play with both Sean and Max as always, but also to have Jason here running for us is a real treat. And so I can't wait to see where we go next. Jason, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right, the dawn phase. So we have some steps. This is an upkeep phase, and it kind of, the way I run the game, it kind of marks the end of the session as well. So the first thing is we would collect rewards if a threat was resolved. A threat is not yet resolved, and so we don't collect any rewards for it yet. And now we do dawn questions. So you each have a section on your character sheet called dawn questions. And this is how you get experience points in the game, the main way. And if you can answer yes to a question, you get an experience point. That's basically how it works. You get up to 5 experience points and you take an advancement. Now, the first 3 questions are the same for everyone. And the first 2, did the hunter answer a capital Q question? And did the hunters resolve a threat? The answer is no so far on those. So no one's getting credit for those first 2. However, you might have gotten an echo in the night. So let's start with Mr. Roble. Mr. Roble, did you experience an echo in the night?
I don't think so.
I'm trying to think.
I thought momentarily about saying that maybe Teddy had stolen a cake knife from the kitchen. But then I forgot when the time came. I was like, no, he stole a kitchen knife. No.
You know, it's the spirit of the thing that counts, right?
He did use a cake knife, though.
Yeah, but it was my Teddy, though.
No, true.
Okay, well, so let's keep going. Did you express a clear preference for the beautiful over the mundane? Yes, you did, several times. So you get to get credit for that one. And did you let someone touch you and then make them pay a price for doing so? I think yes, because when Mrs. Beale touched your hand, you almost in a very humiliating way, changed gloves. Right? So,
Yes.
yeah, it was very, very, very good. So you get credit for that one as well. And so then just mark your XP track with 2 boxes and you're good to go. The XP track's right below. Let's go over to Liam Thop. I believe you got an echo in the night, but maybe remind us. Tony?
So I just, as long as I did it right, I'm not 100% sure. So we had a salt parallel, but I didn't talk about salt. Somebody else talked about salt, and then I wove salt into what I was.
Oh no, as long as that's fine. As long as
that's how it works. Yes,
yeah,
then I did.
That's
do
perfectly
that, yes.
fine. Yeah,
yeah, because you had him throw salt into the bathtub, and I had that mirror as an echo when I threw salt on.
I love it. I think that's perfect. Did you perform a ritual? Yes, you did. The way you got the dark spirits off of Constance, I think, qualifies. Did you counsel someone using your supernatural affinities as the basis for that advice? That I don't feel as much. What do you think?
I don't know, because again, it's an interpretation. My initial encounter with Constance was based on seeing the thing upstairs, but I don't know if that was because of my supernatural affinities or not. But then we did have a nice long conversation afterwards. I don't know if that's the intent of the question, though.
What does the table think? I'm kind of 2 minds.
And while Constance was certainly having a gossipy classist version of it, I was having a care for the other spiritual conversation.
Yeah, no, I can tell us where you're going with it. What do you think, Max and Sean?
I missed what Sean said because it was
it feels like a yes on my side, but I think maybe that's my background as an English teacher, aggressively looking for any possible echoes anywhere.
No, I'm into it. I think it's good because you did immediately you basically went and counseled her and got with her because of what you saw happen. Okay. So I'm into it. It's yeah, I think it's fine. Let's go to Mr. Pencrier. Did you experience an echo of the night, Mr. Pencrier?
I don't think so.
I'm trying to think. I always feel like I hear them that maybe they happen unintentionally sometimes. You know, because that's the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to work on the subconscious level, right? But,
yeah.
what was your unseen was the absinthe, the actress.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not.
There was glass, and the fact that where it was the bottle of the glass and the fact that the glass smashed could be it if we're really pulling it straight, like pulling at the edges.
I'm okay with it. I like it. Take it. Yeah. These can be very, very like subtle. I think that's perfectly fine. Did you loudly curse your family's name?
I did it vocally, but not loudly.
When was this?
So at the point when I was essentially like being quite sad that the lady who stopped the traffic was almost treating me like
right.
young thing cry.
That's right. Yeah.
That wasn't
no. It wasn't like it wasn't like that. I think it's in the spirit of it though. You can take it. Did you tell someone why their plans were poorly made?
No, but I thought about it quietly. I kept it to myself.
Very good. Very good. And now, if you wish, you can choose new dawn questions of the two elective ones, or you can leave either the same if you wish. And there are no playbook moves we need to resolve, and we don't have any Janus Mask today, so that concludes our session. But before we go into debrief, a little end of credits scene, if you will. The camera of our television show swoops away from London. We're flying overhead, out of the city, out to the country, to one of these grand old English country homes, manor homes. It's nighttime. And we zoom into one of the rooms in this great manor home, a study, the central feature of which is a gigantic map of London, which dominates one wall. It's so big that to reach the highest parts, you have to have one of those library ladders to get to it. And there's a single piece of furniture in the room, a wingback chair. We can't see who's sitting in it yet, but we see an impossibly ancient butler, slowly, very slowly, carefully, walking to the chair with a drink on a silver tray. And the person sitting in the chair is that woman, the wealthy woman in the carriage, in her blue gown, the sapphire on her neck glittering in the candlelight. She takes the drink and she stands up and she considers the map. And she walks over to the map and she has 3 brass pins. She pins one of the pins roughly in somewhere in East London, Limehouse perhaps. Another one she pins on 18 St. James's Street. And the third she pins in Belgravia on Hargrave House. And that concludes the end of credits scene, and now we can go to debrief. For debrief, I like to do stars and wishes, if that's okay. Stars are things you enjoyed, either the game, something that one of your fellow players did, something about the story, something I did. Wishes are things that you hope to see tomorrow when we play. And we can also just talk generally as well. But please, take it away.
I had such a good time. I will say this because it's an off-screen thing. I got to look at the press kit that you send out and then some of the prep materials and some other things that may not be of interest to a lot of people, but one of my favorite pieces of the press kit that I feel like a lot of people don't, but I also just think it's such a thoughtful thing to include, and I see it a lot in the work that you do, is what is it like to play this game? And even with that said, like the experience of reading this is what it's like to play this game, which is so helpful, especially for a game like anything that comes out of the Brindlewood Bay School of Design, but especially the Between, is such a helpful thing to help evoke mood. That's such a practical player-facing piece that is not necessarily as thematic. But having the prep of that makes it so much easier to step into the experience. That is absolutely a star, but it's a super nerdy, I'm a marketing person and a designer behind the scenes star that no one may ever tell you besides me. So I want to make sure I mention it. And I'll think of some other ones in just a second also too about actual play. Yeah, give me a second.
I'm going to anger the chat. I love Constance Head.
I do too. I love Constance. They always kill her.
Somebody said, to be fair, one of the people was like, we killed Constance. Like, to be fair, we killed almost all of the side characters in our adventure. And so, you know.
I grew up on an island of 2,000 people. And so I grew up in like that kind of environment where people are like really nosy and gossipy about their neighbors. And so I have like a strong soft spot when those characters, like I know it's also a trope, but I have a very strong soft spot for those characters that are super nosy, that know everything that's happening in like some kind of, even though we're playing in London, which is not a small town, it gives me really strong like small town vibes. I love Constance Head. Also, like the portrayals of Constance Head. It's wonderful. I love it. Into
it. Chat has forgiven you. Somebody said, I'm a T-Rex said, I'm glad she almost got a date.
She did. I know. Yeah, she had a good run of it, except for the whole possession thing. Star for me. I may not get them all out in once, but I'll think of some here. I had a great time, really, really fun. It was star to you, Tony, for organizing everything and keeping us, on track and with all the stream and everything. And yeah, I thought everyone did a really good job, sort of like figuring out who their characters are, and kind of like feeling around the edges to figure out what your lane is in terms of like going in and finding out how to do the role play. That's always tricky in a session one, right? Especially this kind of session one where character creation is so fast and you just dive right in, right? There's not a lot of like preamble, and you can't talk about your past. So you really are kind of trying to figure it out like on your own, And so I thought everyone did a really great job with that. I loved the detail of the glove being replaced with a new glove after Alice touched it. That was wonderful. I really liked how Sean played Mr. Pin Crier. Like, I mean, it was almost like Mr. Pin Crier was doing like a separate story, and that happens sometimes, and that's fine. But but I kind of liked it because we got to sort of see a lot about your family, which is really nice because in a two-shot, I fear we wouldn't really get to see much of that, but I think we got to see quite a bit of it already, which I think is wonderful. So thank you for that. But yeah, just overall, just a great time.
Yeah, I had a cracking time all in all. If I were to pin it down to my absolute favorite part, again, it's that, like, in the same way that if you kind of get that weird parallax effect, Netflix pause screen before the next episode runs, it's the de-glove and re-glove moment that we had from Francis. And in fact, like, Max, I particularly loved just not quite slimy in the like in a bad way, but just like that perfect level of just terribly beautiful person just being terribly direct all of the time without saying any words. I thought that was beautiful, which I thought was absolutely excellent. I really enjoyed how much peril there was, and again, I'm primarily a horror GM. I wanted there to be more bad things. I think we avoided too much bad, and I hope that whatever happens tomorrow, there's more death, apart from obviously our unnamed cabman. But that's my real wish.
I was going to say my stars and wishes are Candace Head, and then you had to go and ask for more death and bad things, and now I don't want more Candace Head. I want her to survive.
We could take her head, perhaps,
or her feet.
Wish for me. So the funny thing about the between is like session 2 feels really distinctly different from session 1, and then session 3 and onward all feel like session 2. But session 2 like feels kind of different in the sense that you now have some conditions and you have to get them cleared. And the way you do that is you have intimate one-on-one scenes with another hunter, while one of you is doing your vice. I'd love to see how the floggings vice goes if that's the one we go with. But that's like the TikTok of the game, right? Like you collect conditions, and now you have to have these scenes. It's called the vulnerable move to get the conditions removed. So I'll be very happy to see that. That's sort of like other shoe dropping as far as the gameplay goes. And I would like to see some Janus Mask. I think we'll have a chance to see some Janus Mask. And I'd like to see a little bit of it just to learn a little bit more about the characters as far as that goes. And a wish is also a kind of a homework assignment. Like be thinking about the clues and what it means and what this ghost wants to send them on their way.
For me, stars, I think across the board for each of you would be like, I loved literally part of it's the directness, but part of it was like, Max, your willingness to have Francis like lean into that creepy child and continually push like the thing forward, because there's a level at which like a character being direct is one thing, a player pushing forward when they know this is a bad thing is a different type of thing, and watching those two things mesh were really beautiful. I do love the way that Bran, like you said, it kind of feels like a different storyline, but I also feel like Francis and Liam were like, in all honesty, since we haven't had one, we were fuck around and Bran was find out. Like 100%. Like it's like, hey, we're gonna go screw around with a bunch of stuff. You're gonna research things, but also when we need something killed, you're gonna show up, right? Because otherwise we're screwed. Is very much a vibe that I get from this crew just very, very early on. And I love that dynamic. And then Jason, like I said, we talked about it a little bit, but it's not just the ability to cut for tension, which you do incredibly well, and that I've played with a lot of GMs who do well. You ran 3 concurrent sessions basically this entire time. Like there was not a point, and I feel like a lot of GMs oftentimes rush you to get back together just to lower the mental load and have interaction between PCs. And we all had different things we wanted to do the entire time, and you kept a really seamless flow between all of those things while building tension and doing excellent cutting. And it wasn't always a one-to-one. You went in different ways every single time, and it felt tremendously organic. Our friends from Diesel Shot also just rated, hey, we're finishing up our part 1 of our The Between actual play with Jason Cordova from over at Gauntlet Publishing. Come back tomorrow for part 2 at 2 p.m. This was such a thoroughly satisfying thing. I also will say, like, I am somebody who tends to chuckle my way through horror because it's one of the ways that we alleviate the horror for ourselves. Jason, your GMing style is invitational, like a creepy baby in a crib saying, come here, before giving you a wax doll. You just want to lean into it. And that level of subtle invitation, both in the writing, in the creating of scenes, in the collaborative play, there's a sense of control and agency by players the entire time, which I think is tremendous in letting people feel comfortable doing that lean-in process. And so both from a writing as well as GMing standpoint, that's a huge, huge star for me. I think if I have wishes, though, I wish everybody would come back tomorrow for part 2. That's my wish.
At the very least, we will.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
I'm excited because, again, like I had only read this. This is my first time playing The Between, and the way that
Max, come a little closer to your mic.
The way that the mechanics actually work is like quite remarkable, but also like it's really been quite interesting to be on the side of them. And so I also am like very excited about having like a Janus Mask move go off and then see how those conditions get cleared and like have the parts of the mechanics that we haven't really touched on yet, them coming into play tomorrow. Like I'm super into that.
Yeah.
That is a thing that I am thoroughly looking forward to.
I want to say another star that when Tony was speaking reminded me. Everyone did a really, really good job with Paint the Scene and with some of those like player contributions in terms of like the world building. And I love it because I love riffing off that. So like it helps me a lot. Like I feel like that's the secret sauce of my game because it does invite players to participate in that part of it. And so it just kind of gives the keeper juice to sort of like, go even further, so just so stars for that for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, but
does anybody have any other thoughts or things they want to say? Or if like we do questions typically at the end, which we'll do a longer thing tomorrow, but if either if Sean or you have if either of y'all have any questions right now just about something that's not plot related, feel free. I feel like I saw one up above also too. I'll scroll.
Is there something? Is there something in the chat? Maybe
that's what I was going to see if there was. If chat has a question, they can. But I feel like somebody asked a question. I'm going to scroll through and see if I can find it. But if anybody has any, if either of y'all have a question, you're welcome to ask. Doing
that. Mine is the kind of like adjunct question I always like asking in these things. There's definitely a lot of Penny Dreadful here, which is largely most of what my like catch up prep work and stuff was doing. But what was it about that and like that series and that tone in general that really made you want to like turn again the whole like Brindlewood Bay style open-ended mystery solving to that harsh gothic?
Yeah, well, so the funny thing is The Between came first before Brindlewood Bay, right? Brindlewood Bay was released first, but it wasn't developed first. I developed Brindlewood Bay because I needed a mystery system. And so I created Brindlewood Bay to basically try out as a proof of concept to see if the mystery system would work. And so because The Between existed as far back as like late 2018, but it didn't have it didn't have any of the keeper side stuff. It was all just the player facing stuff. And so that was just sort of like a sort of technical thing. Like that's kind of how that went. But to kind of get at your question though, of like, maybe like why Penny Dreadful, and why go in that direction? Like, I mean, honestly, like that's pretty straightforward. I watched Penny Dreadful, that second episode of the first season, the Seance episode where Ava Green does that fucking powerhouse like performance at the Seance, and also the other the medium who in season 2 is like the head of the witch coven. She's also very, very good in that scene. Ava Green gets all the credit for that scene, but she's also very, very good. Love that whole sequence. And I just remember thinking when I watched that, I was like, oh, there needs to be a role-playing game of this, like I want to know what this is. And I think what it really boiled down to is I started to have this idea of, what if Penny Dreadful, but it was like Gotham City. Like it's not just a vampire we're trying to stop. It's like a whole series of like monstrosities and killers all over the city, and we have to contend with them, right? Because it is very much like a kind of street level super game, right? But like just set in Victorian era. And so that's sort of like where it all kind of got going. I kind of wanted to do a street level supers-esque sort of Gotham City-esque like game, but in this like Victorian framework. And I also wanted to kind of like poke fun at like sort of, just sort of like the game pokes fun at different like aspects of like colonialism and like different aspects of like Victorian life and like things like that. Like one of the things I think is really interesting about the game, the more you play it, the more you get into it, is you begin to realize that you're the bad guys. Like that the mastermind, the woman with the sapphire around her throat, Theodora Brathwaite, she actually has like a pretty good justification for her actions. When you start to realize that like you're the villain. I just kind of love all those themes, I guess. If evil, why so sexy? Kind of thing.
Can't possibly be a bad guy. I find you far too hot.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, we are going to be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. I want to remind everybody I just dropped links below. If you have not yet, go check out The Between. There's some information at the link that I just dropped, as well as in the description, to go read more about it, as well as a link to go purchase the game if you want to go check it out. Additionally, again, both Max is itch funding right now Himbos, which I am super excited about. We'll be coming back later on. Exuvier is the game that Sean mentioned, but Sean has a ton of great games. Some of them are bigger, but also a lot of them are just very small little postcardy games too, that you can easily pick up and start playing. And then our games Through the Void, which is finishing up itch funding in like 5 hours for the beta version of it. And 13 Hunters, which launches next week, are also things we would love to have you go check out. If you haven't checked out the Gauntlet, when I'm talking to designers or players or anybody in the RPG scene right now who just are telling me they want to play more games, or they want to find people to play their games with, or just find out what great things are happening right now, I am forever pointing people towards the Gauntlet play community. And the link that links to The Between is going to take you to the Gauntlet website, which is going to link out to all that stuff also too. So if you're not a part of Gauntlet, though I know a number of members of the chat are, please go check it out. Would love to connect with you in the Slack channel over there as well, or any other part of the community for that matter. But always super grateful to Jason, not only for the amazing games you design and publish, but also for the work of that community and everybody else at the Gauntlet who helps make that happen. So please go check those things out if you haven't yet, and we'll be back tomorrow for part 2 of The Between. Bye, everybody.